Just as she thought she was about to be bitten, he suddenly stopped. He was holding back the pain from the curse, all because he didn't want to hurt the girl in front of him. But right after that, the girl suddenly threw her arms around him. She kissed him on the lips first, though the gesture carried no special meaning at all. She only wanted to cure the male lead of his fit of madness. Before long, though, the girl went from acting on her own will to simply being acted upon. If you're wondering why, it all began with the cursed constitution she shared with her older sister. She had been transported into a dark novel, reborn as the female lead's younger sister. After their mother passed away, her sister Estella had raised her in her place. Even though Estella was still a child herself, she never once gave up on her. That was why her sister was the most precious person in the world to her. Then, on her 20th birthday, she suddenly saw her sister's future in a dream. Estella was attacked again and again by a man, unable to fight back. That man called her a witch. When her sister woke her from the nightmare, she realized she had just regained the memories of her past life. She had been transported into the very novel she once read, The Doll of Cairo, a heavy, dark story. The male lead's family carried a severe hereditary illness, the frenzy. Some sufferers showed symptoms as teenagers, but most developed it in adulthood. Once they reached adulthood, the symptoms would fade, but most of them were put down for losing control before that happened. The only way to rid oneself of the symptoms was to consume bodily fluids from a witch. She stared blankly at the turnips in front of her, lost in thought. Why on earth had she liked reading this kind of story in her past life? Maybe that was exactly why she'd been punished with this reincarnation. Vina, are you not feeling well? Good thing you don't have a fever, but you should go home and rest. Vina sank into worry. The biggest problem right now was her beautiful, kind-hearted sister. In the story, that sister died in a dungeon, her life ending in tragedy. No, she absolutely could not let her sister suffer a fate like that. Fortunately, Estella had a childhood friend she'd grown up with. Though he had no power or status, he was gentle and attentive toward her sister, a genuinely good man. She had already made up her mind. She would get her sister to flee before she could ever be taken. Meanwhile, at the Grand Duke's estate, a man was being tormented by the agony of the frenzy. His only hope of survival was to find a witch. At first, her sister refused to run, no matter how Vina tried to convince her. But Vina knew that deep down, her sister truly cared for that childhood friend. Even though she wasn't the least bit satisfied with Amun, since no one seemed good enough for her perfect sister. In the novel, Estella spent her days locked in a dark cellar, missing Amun so much she nearly cried herself blind. Her feelings for Amun ran so deep that she couldn't bring herself to accept the handsome, wealthy male lead at all. If you and Amun leave, what will happen to you? Sister, I already told you. I can go work in a noble's household. Not only would I have food and lodging, I'd earn money too. I heard they're looking for a maid with real strength. You know how strong I am. But Estella, who loved her sister so deeply, couldn't bring herself to leave. Vina, don't say things like that anymore. Just then, a drunken man came bursting in. Estella trembled as she called out to their father, then stepped in front of her sister. This man was the other reason Vina wanted her sister to run. He was always drunk and beat them, and he constantly took every bit of money her sister worked so hard to earn. This time, a bottle came flying straight at her. You wretched girl, how dare you look at me like that? Father, I'll discipline her myself. Please, for my sake, don't do this. He thought to himself that if he beat her too badly, she wouldn't be able to earn money anymore. So he shoved Estella aside instead. This is all because of this unlucky brat. She made me waste good liquor. You'd better pay me back for that bottle. After seeing their cruel father off, Estella rushed anxiously to check her sister's wounds. Sister, are you really going to keep enduring this from him? Do we have to wait until he beats you to death before we do something? In the end, Estella gave in. Then let's leave together. No, we can't. If we both disappear at once, he'll definitely come after us. You go first, I'll stay behind and hold him off. We'll only be apart for a little while. Don't worry, I'll leave right after you. Sister, I've gathered every bit of courage to say this, so please, be brave just this once too. That day, Estella finally made up her mind. Fortunately, she had already spoken with Amun about it a few days before. In the novel, Estella had willingly walked into hell just to protect her little sister. She hoped her sister could find happiness, and she was absolutely determined not to let Estella meet such a tragic end. Vina wiped her tears away. She couldn't afford to cry anymore. There was still so much to do. First, she had to lock their father up. In truth, their father didn't hate her sister nearly as much as it seemed. The beatings Estella took were really meant to protect her. It was only because Vina resembled their late mother that he despised her so. With that settled, her task of locking him away was complete. Fortunately, he came home at midnight and fell straight asleep, giving her enough time to barricade the door. Next, she had to wait for someone from the Grand Duke's estate to arrive. And sure enough, there really was a woman with pink hair. She found herself being stared at in an unsettling way. Pink hair was rare in this world, but before she'd regained her memories of the novel, she hadn't thought anything of it. In the novel, it was described as sweet pink hair carrying a magic that enchanted anyone who saw it. The person introduced himself as Odie Icon, an employee of the Grand Duke's household. She knew this man. In the novel, he was the one who took Vina hostage to threaten her and drag the female lead away. "Is there something you need from me?" Just as the man was about to answer, her father's cursing voice rang out from inside. "Who's in there? Might I ask if you're keeping some kind of degenerate locked up?" "That's my father, please don't mind him." "So you've locked your own father away?" Vina's head throbbed. She needed some excuse and fast. "Actually, my father suffers from a mental illness," she said. But to her surprise, the man showed no interest at all in the matter. "That doesn't matter to me, I'll be direct. I want you to come with me to the Grand Duke's estate." Everything was going smoothly. She could go in her sister's place. But once she arrived, Vina realized nothing was quite as she had imagined. In the novel, the female lead first met the male lead in a small, cramped room. But she had been brought straight into a vast dungeon instead. As I said, there's only one thing you need to do. The man pulled open a thick iron door, and before he could say another word, she was shoved inside. "Why would you just throw someone in like that?" Odie's voice was ice cold. "What you need to do is find some way to calm the man inside." "Are you joking with me? I don't even know where to start." She had come in her sister's place, but aside from their matching hair color, everything else about them was different. And so, if the male lead was obsessed with her sister, he likely wouldn't be interested in Vina at all. That gave her confidence that she wouldn't be facing a tragic fate. All she had to do was play along, then wait until the male lead realized she was useless, and let her go. Ever since she was young, she'd been strong and healthy, so she'd always liked burly men who could snap a log in two with a single blow. She used to joke with her sister that no man could ever be as brawny as a wild beast. Still, saying that was one thing. She didn't actually want a man who was literally a wild beast. And here was Theodore, future heir of House Caro, currently losing his mind to the frenzy. In the novel, the moment he met Estella, he pounced on her, savagely biting her neck and drinking her blood. So why was it so different when it was her turn? He was practically feral with hunger, as if he meant to devour her whole. Her arm was torn open, and he was chewing on something dripping with blood. Theodore muttered, "So sweet." "Have you come back to your senses? Can we talk about this calmly for a moment?" No sooner had she said it than the man lunged again. Great. He really was just a wild beast after all. Emun had once told her that when facing a wild beast, you must never run. You had to look it straight in the eye and slowly back away to keep your distance. The most important thing was the eyes, and you could never show fear. She glared fiercely at him, and Theodore seemed to react somehow. It seemed even a madman could still feel panic. As she stepped back, her foot suddenly slipped, and the beast lunged at the same moment. Blood dripped onto the floor as Vina threw up one arm to block him. She still got bitten. It hurt, and it was terrifying. He seemed ready to start devouring her from the arm onward. Just as she was wondering whether she should punch him, the man suddenly froze mid-motion. The jaws biting into her stopped exerting any force at all. He seemed frozen, as if time itself had stopped for him. She didn't dare move carelessly, afraid of waking the beast again. In the novel Afflicted with the Frenzy, Theodore was a monster driven purely by instinct and desire. But looking closer, she noticed scars on his mouth, wounds covering his hands and broken, torn fingernails, wounds she recognized all too well. As a child, she too had often been locked in a dark room by her father, and no matter how she screamed, no one ever paid attention. Besides, the man before her now didn't seem to match the original story at all. What if he had gone through something similar to what she had as a child? Carefully, she reached out and patted his back to comfort him. "It's all right, don't be afraid. Everything will be fine." As she spoke gently to soothe him, his eyes faded from blazing red back to normal. Then he slumped against her, seeming not to hear her calling to him at all. Could it be that drinking her blood had eased his frenzy? But in the original story, even after he drank Estella's blood, he kept tormenting the female lead relentlessly until dawn. Could things really be resolved this easily? And his whole condition seemed off, too. Could she have mixed up the novel somehow? Hey! A pink blob suddenly appeared before her. Vina was startled. What in the world is this? Wait, could she have picked the wrong genre entirely? The Doll of Caro didn't have any monster or magic elements in its setting. Although House Caro carried the hereditary frenzy, judging by those blazing red eyes, it looked more like they'd been struck by a curse. And yet, no matter how she looked at it, this thing was clearly a slime. How rude! How dare you call a member of the Great Demon Clan a lowly slime creature? Are you tired of living? Seeing the girl standing there dumbfounded only made the blob angrier. Why aren't you saying anything? Answer me. If you're not a slime, then what are you? I am Sujin. All right, Sujin, then what clan are you from? Thinking it hadn't heard her clearly, Vina repeated herself. Forgive me, my name is Vina Grisha. I'm human. So what clan are you? The blob started playing dead. After a few seconds of silence, she widened her eyes. That's definitely a slime. I am part of the Great Demon Clan. Do not call me a slime. The blob leapt down angrily. Just as she was about to call it back, the person at her feet suddenly stirred. When she looked back at the blob, it had vanished. Everything was so different from the original story she knew. At that moment, Theodore was trapped in a nightmare. He had developed the illness earlier than anyone else in his family. When he pinned his hopes on his father, the man had only left him with a few cold words. Don't lose your mind. Do you remember how your brother died? If you don't want to die the same way, you must never kill the witch. That was the last thing he heard his father say before he lost consciousness. It wasn't the warm comfort of a father to his son, only an order and a warning. He had thought his father would help him. He didn't know how to ease the tearing agony of fangs suddenly growing in, or how to control hands sprouting sharp claws. He only hoped his father, who had lived through the same pain, would tell him it was all right, that it would pass soon. But there was nothing. There were times he thought it would be better to just die. Until, at last, the words he had longed to hear came from the mouth of a total stranger. When Theodore regained his senses, the pain in his body was gone, and his teeth and hands had returned to normal. Wait, where's the witch? Where is she? After Odie told him the girl was still in the dungeon, he rushed there at once. He couldn't remember what had happened, but he knew the price that came with curing the frenzy. Could he have hurt her? The moment he opened the door, he saw the girl standing there in the dungeon. Her whole body radiated resentment. 3 parts grievance, 4 parts fury. I've been waiting forever. How could you treat me like this? Theodore was flustered. She really had been hurt because of him, just as he feared. The next thing he heard was, when I got here, you clearly said I'd have food and a place to stay, but instead, you made me breathe air and sit in a dungeon. And you didn't even feed me twice a day, did you? Theodore stood there dazed. Had she been hurt so badly she'd lost her mind? Mistaking him for Odie, Vina had started venting her hunger-fueled anger. After a long stretch of scolding, the man suddenly stepped closer. It seems you have a great deal of grievances. Of course you would. The rest? She swallowed the rest of her words. Wait, that voice. Vina looked up only to realize the man before her was the novel's male lead. Her mind went blank with shock. She had assumed only someone from the Grand Duke's household would come to fetch her. She never expected Theodore himself to show up. She stole a glance up and down at him. His eyes had returned to normal, his voice was steadier. It seemed he had come to his senses. Why are you just standing there frozen? I suppose you've never seen a monster like me before? No, if she only judged him by last night, thinking of him as a monster would be perfectly reasonable. But back then his eyes had looked like a lost child's, and now, weren't they the eyes of a rebellious youth instead? It's not my fault. It's this world's fault. At this rate, he might just turn into an actual brat. Seeing the girl stay silent only frustrated Theodore more. Are you too scared to even answer me? I think you're as adorable as a bunny, my lord. The man, who had absolutely nothing in common with a bunny, gave her an icy look. Did I say something wrong? Of course. The male lead of a novel is usually some kind of predator. I didn't mean you look like a bunny. I meant your red eyes are as cute as a bunny's. And then what? So in my eyes, you're pretty adorable too. You're calling me adorable? Someone help, I'm running out of excuses. Still, to be honest, compared to an adorable bunny, Theodore was truly the handsome type. Now that he was back to normal, she could see even more clearly that he really was the male lead of a romance novel. Like a classic dark romance archetype, his gaze was full of predatory intensity, and combined with his slightly husky voice, it only made him more captivating. But compared to a growling wolf, she preferred a loyal, tail-wagging puppy. And she wasn't Theodore's type either, so at least neither of them would be blinded by feelings. That was a good thing. So, what exactly did you do to me? Vina held up her bitten arm. Wasn't that supposed to be her line? Is this the only wound you have? Well, isn't it serious enough? Impossible. How many more wounds did he expect her to have? Could it be that he had no memory of what happened during his fit? If he doubted her because her wounds weren't severe enough, distrusted her, and then went looking for her sister instead, everything would fall apart. She had given up everything just to get her sister away safely. How had the female lead reacted in the original story after the male lead drank her blood? That's right. With that thought, she started faking a faint. It seems I lost too much blood last night. I feel a little anemic. She let herself collapse to the floor with a thud. Though she lay there perfectly still as if dead, it hurt so much she could have actually died. She'd twisted her ankle in the fall. After a moment of silence, he spoke, ordering someone to carry her back to her room. Excellent, she'd gotten away with it. But hadn't Theodore come alone? She peeked her eyes open and realized he was kneeling right beside her. If you have even a shred of awareness left, open your eyes and stand up on your own. As expected, this trick hadn't fooled the male lead at all. Luckily, he didn't press her any further. Watching the girl's retreating figure, Theodore only grew more confused. How could someone who'd spent a whole night with a man in the grip of the frenzy still be so healthy and quick on her feet? But recalling how flustered she'd looked when caught in her act, he couldn't help but laugh. What was that expression on her face? Either way, it was a relief that she wasn't hurt too badly. The smile slowly faded from his face. Perhaps she wouldn't consider this fortunate at all. Unlike the pessimistic Theodore, why wouldn't Vina consider this a stroke of good luck? This was more than lucky. It was practically a miracle. And so she went from the dungeon to a lavishly furnished private room, had her wounds treated, was given delicious meals, and received fine clothes she had never once worn before. She was assigned the role of maid, but that was only a title. The real substance of her job was to cure Theodore of the frenzy. Odie couldn't understand why a single dress could make the girl so happy. She was thrilled simply because in her whole life, Vina had owned only 2 dresses. One was baby clothes her mother had sewn by hand while pregnant with her. The other was a dress her sister had scraped together money to buy her for her birthday. That very dress was the one the male lead had torn to shreds the day before. She had worn it on purpose to make a good impression. If she'd known it would get ruined, she would have worn something else. Thinking of her sister, her heart ached all over again. If things followed the original story, her sister was bound to suffer terribly at the male lead's hands. I wonder if Emun has been taking good care of her. The 2 of them absolutely had to escape safely. She missed her sister so much. Are you crying? The blob appeared again. Vina froze, and then her tears retreated with an audible snap. What in the world is this thing? I am the great Sujin of the Demon Clan. You've forgotten me already? A male lead afflicted with the frenzy needed a witch's bodily fluids to regain his sanity. But she didn't want to get bitten all over her body every single time. In the novel, once the story was about halfway through, the female lead Estella began using other methods to provide bodily fluids to the male lead. From then on, pleasure gradually replaced pain. Even though she'd found that part of the story entertaining to read, she absolutely could not bring herself to do the same. So she needed to find an easier way to obtain bodily fluid. She looked at the blob. What would you do if someone gave you tears to drink? Kill that person? What about sweat then? Kill that person twice. So that wouldn't work either. Even she didn't want to consume someone else's sweat. But dying once was still better than dying twice. She thought of something sad that had happened recently, trying to force out some tears. Just as she was wondering when she'd ever see her sister again, someone suddenly walked into the room. It was none other than the novel's male lead, Theodore. Why was he here? Theodore looked just as awkward. He'd knocked, but no one answered. Seeing the door open, he'd come in. The reason he'd come to find her was to apologize for his earlier behavior. Odie had reported the girl's situation to him. A poor family, an alcoholic father, a mother who died young, and now even her sister had gone missing. Odie had also told him the dress she was wearing was extremely precious to her. Theodore's guilty conscience had stirred. leading to the situation now. A girl with teary eyes on top of her torn dress. He genuinely hadn't realized a single dress could mean so much. "Why are you crying?" She couldn't very well say it was to feed him tears, so she said, "I miss my family." Though her act was rather unconvincing, in Theodore's eyes the girl seemed utterly pitiful. It seemed the bond between her and her sister was very strong. That only made him feel worse about the whole thing. He reached out and gently wiped her tears away, then lifted her chin so she looked straight at him. Vina froze, panic flashing through her mind. Wait, why does he even care? Could he have overheard her talking to the slime just now? She'd deny it to her dying breath if she had to. So why did you come to my room? Oh, right, I just had Odie send you a letter. Did you get it? Only then did Theodore remember his second reason for coming. Because just before this, he had received a strange letter from her. The letter asked about his symptoms and the timing of his fits, its contents both absurd and disturbingly blunt. Perhaps only she would dare write such a letter to a noble. But what interested him even more was this particular symbol. What does this strange little mark mean? It means a smiling face. That? Theodore looked at her, utterly unconvinced. That's supposed to be a smile? Vina forced her face into an expression. Like this. See? It was, without question, the first time Vina had ever seen someone look so utterly speechless. At least it meant he hadn't caught on that she wanted him to eat something strange. Soon enough, though, joy overtook Vina's cleverness entirely. Theodore had given her a large sum of money to compensate for tearing her dress. That dress wasn't worth nearly that much. But I heard it means a great deal to you. Still, you didn't need to give me 2 million luna for it. That amount was enough for an ordinary person to live on for months. She refused, her heart aching at the sum. You really didn't need to compensate me this much. Theodore radiated the glow of wealth. Things of true value can't be measured in money. If he insisted on giving it to her, then she'd accept it. She would save it carefully so that when her sister returned, the two of them could finally live a good life. No longer sad, Vina thanked him again. Thank you, Theodore. That smile seemed to catch on him, too. Earlier, she'd told him he looked like a bunny, but now she wasn't sure who was more adorable than a bunny. After securing the male lead's treasury, she began learning the finer points of tea-making. Aside from 2 hours of lessons each day, she spent the rest of her time eating and having fun. What kind of dream job was this? And she'd already been here over 10 days. By rights, the effects of the bodily fluid should have worn off by now. Why hadn't the male lead had another fit? She looked at the blob, but before she could even speak, it flatly refused. No, I haven't even said anything yet. You don't need to say it. I already know you're thinking about that meathead. You want to know what he's up to, don't you? Ah, right, huh? That's not it at all. Why do you call him a meathead? Why not? Is he supposed to be female or something? No, that's not even a word you use for a person. Just use the word man, the blob nodded. Got it, then I'm a man slime. Vina's whole world crumbled. She and this blob had not only been sleeping together for over 10 days, but constantly hugging and cuddling affectionately too. But how could this thing possibly be male? After being bitten by the raving male lead, she'd been compensated with a bag full of gold coins. Compared to her sister's fate of being imprisoned in the original story, she felt like she'd practically met an angel. But the moment she laid eyes on the Grand Duke Caro, she was yanked straight back to reality from her sweet dream. Grand Duke Caro was Theodore's father, a man whose power rivaled even the emperor's. But he was even more infamous for his brutality. He'd falsely accused rival families of treason, wiping out their entire houses. The men were sold into slavery, the women sold into brothels. On the battlefield, he was even more merciless. During the war with the Kingdom of Diora, he had killed 38 members of the Diora royal family and hung their heads from the city walls. And yet, that same cruel man was now staring intently at her. Could she be the witch, she thought, and Vina's heart stopped. When she looked again, he had already turned away. The young maid beside her whispered a warning, "Don't raise your head, be careful or Lord Odie will scold you." She lowered her head at once, but her mind kept replaying that one moment. That man was terrifying. He had only said a single sentence, but the tone and the look in his eyes as if human lives were mere tools sent a chill down her spine. If she could help it, she never wanted to face that man again. Today wasn't just the day the Grand Duke returned, it was also the first day she'd bring Theodore his tea. Accompanying her was Theodore's old nurse, Rita, though unfortunately they were turned away before they'd even gotten through the door. She could get out of the chore, which of course delighted her, but Rita looked deeply troubled. After some prodding from Vina, Rita finally admitted that Theodore and his father had a poor relationship, and every time the Grand Duke returned, Theodore acted this way. She found it a little strange to hear about a bad father-son relationship, but then again, that was hardly unusual. My own father and I don't get along either. Just as Rita was thinking the girl and the young master were equally pitiable, she heard Vina say cheerfully, "But I still have a sister, so it's fine. My sister is especially gentle. So does Theodore have other family he's close to?" This time, Rita had no idea how to answer. From the moment he was born, Theodore had never been welcomed into this world. His mother called him a monster, beating and scolding him constantly, never once hiding it from anyone. She told him to just die, right in front of everyone. Not every parent loves their child. In the end, the nurse said only one thing. The young master and the Duchess didn't get along either, so please don't bring either of them up in front of him. She sighed. Those two people were far too heartless. Vina had a wretched father, but at least she had a sister to lean on. Could it be that Theodore had no one close to him at all? In the novel, he was cold and merciless, showing no mercy even to the female lead. Standing there, she looked at the tightly shut door behind her and thought, if only there were some kind of tea that could lift the mood. But whatever the male lead was like didn't really concern her. Sujin recommended her a perfect spot for slacking off. Napping here felt wonderful. Just as she was about to drift off to sleep, a voice startled her awake. From somewhere far off came a man's shout. Following the sound, she found a man practicing his swordplay. His toned muscles combined with powerful, sweeping movements created a striking, vital beauty under the sunlight, and Vina couldn't help but steal a few more glances. But it didn't take long for something to click in her memory. Wait, why is this man here? Once she got a clear look at him, Vina suddenly remembered. He was the one who had escorted Theodore out of the dungeon days ago. The very first time they'd met, he'd shown open hostility toward her. Being caught by him now definitely wasn't a good sign. She had already decided to turn back, but found herself drawn in for another look, and then another. A striking figure and a handsome face to match. If only he were 5 centimeters taller, it would be perfect. His red hair and blue eyes were quite striking too. Wait, red hair and blue eyes? What is the little witch doing here all alone? She jumped, startled, and blurted out his name, Ishut Klaus. Ishut's defining features in the novel were his red hair and deep blue eyes. He was Theodore's knight, no minor side character at all. Because he had fallen for Estella at first sight and tried to help her escape. In the end, he failed and was executed in a tragic scene. Faced with his question, she scrambled for an excuse. It was the day Odie told me about. The red-haired man eyed her with deep suspicion. Vina nearly wanted to cry. Because this character had helped the female lead, she had adored him back in her past life. And yet, in the novel, Ishut never believed a witch could truly ease the frenzy. Because although Estella's efforts could calm Theodore, they also deepened his obsession and madness toward her. That was why he no longer believed witches even existed. This man doubted even Estella, whom he'd loved at first sight, let alone her. She had been ready to make allowances for his attitude for her sister's sake. Keep dreaming. Do you have any idea how much I suffered in that dungeon? Just thinking about it makes me furious. Ishut asked again, what are you hiding here for? I'm not hiding, I only came here to take a nap. Never mind, you don't need to explain, I already know. I'm sorry, but I have no interest in a little girl like you. I know I'm handsome and impressive, so it's only natural you'd fall for me, but I'm turning you down. Who said I like you? The type of man I like has to be 10 centimeters taller than you, with 20 more kilograms of muscle. That was the least I could ask for. Ishut, who always took pride in his physique, was startled. Could it be that he still wasn't perfect enough? Vina cheerfully said goodbye, then the red-haired knight suddenly panicked and told her to wait. Ishut's large hand reached out, and it suddenly brought back some unpleasant memories for her. The man's build overlapped with the image of her violent father. She screamed in fear, crying out an apology, then crouched down and held her head. Ishut froze, stammering, What is it? Then she came back to her senses. I'm sorry, I just got startled for a moment. Did you need something from me? He could no longer bring up what had just happened. There's a leaf on your head, he said, staring intently at Vina. She pretended nothing was wrong, and he sighed, saying, well, do your best. He had actually wanted to ask if there was any other way to help Theodore. When he first heard about the curse on House Caro and the witches, he thought it was pure nonsense. But after seeing his master's transformation with his own eyes, he couldn't help but believe all of it now. Could this girl really calm Theodore down when he lost himself to madness? Just then, Vina suddenly appeared again. Ishut blinked, wondering what now. Since you're Lord Theodore's knight, we'll be seeing a lot of each other. You can't keep calling me the witch forever. I'm Vina Tisgracia, the red-haired girl said with a sigh of relief, formally introducing herself. He started to grow curious whether this little witch could really save Theodore. The conclusion was that of course she could, only the method was a bit twisted. Just then, Vina stood in front of the door holding a cup of tea, hesitating over what to do. Was this really the only way left? Did she really have no choice but to spit into his tea? After completing several tasks under Rita's supervision, she was finally allowed to bring the tea herself. And yet she still couldn't bring herself to do it, so she began trying to convince herself. No matter how she looked at it, this was still better than letting him turn into a monster again, wasn't it? She wasn't doing this only for herself. She was doing it for Theodore. What exactly was she doing? She swallowed hard and answered awkwardly, "It's time for afternoon tea." When she brought the tea to Theodore, she quietly checked on his condition. His eyes were still purple, and his nails looked fine too. Right now, he was completely calm, with no sign of turning into a monster. Although this attempt had failed, there would still be another chance later. Theodore was holding a book of poetry, and he had been reading it for a long time. That didn't make sense. Wasn't a poetry collection supposed to be quite short? But he didn't seem to have turned a single page all this time. Vina stole a glance only to find that he was staring right back at her. Since when had he been watching her? "Do you like books?" "What? I just noticed you kept staring at this book." She couldn't very well say she'd been observing his condition. "Not really." "Why not?" "Because it's so boring, it makes me sleepy just looking at it." In her past life, she'd preferred books that were exciting and full of suspense, but those were probably hard to find in this world. More importantly, her family had been poor, so books had been a luxury for her and her sister. Theodore looked skeptical. "You say books are boring? Then what do you like?" He'd clearly ignored her before. Why was he suddenly acting like this today? Seeing that she didn't answer, he pressed on. "Is there really nothing you like?" What she liked most was her sister. But Theodore was probably asking about hobbies, like horseback riding, right? Unfortunately, back home, all she ever did was work. I like good food. If there's one thing that makes me happiest since coming here, it's that there's so much delicious food every day. I don't have to go hungry anymore. After coming here, I learned that lamb could be turned into lamb chops, and that grilled fish made into fish cakes could taste this good. Hearing this, Theodore burst out laughing. "That's true. I doubt anyone hates good food. No wonder there's a whole profession devoted to cooking," he said, gesturing to the sofa beside him for her to sit down. "Have you tried anything else delicious lately?" "Actually, recently I saw pudding for the first time. Is it good?" "It wasn't my turn to eat it yet. I only got to see it. I heard the ingredients for pudding are very expensive, so if there's any left over, it goes to the senior servants first." Theodore set the book down. "Is that so? What are you thinking about?" "Oh, the chicken yesterday was really good too. The chicken yesterday tasted that good." As she talked with Theodore, she gradually realized something. This man was nothing like the one in the novel. He didn't come across as arrogant at all, wasn't condescending, and even patiently answered her questions. This conversation made her genuinely happy, and Vina wondered if he felt the same way. The answer was yes. As night fell, Theodore thought back on the day and couldn't help but smile. But right after that, a sharp pain shot through him, leaving him dizzy. That was when Odie appeared. He regained some clarity, but a faint trace of red had crept into his purple eyes. Odie reported that tomorrow a guest would be visiting, the young lady of Count Pablo's house. Although she was officially his mother's tea companion, in reality she was one of the candidates being considered as Theodore's future wife. He didn't even know who these people were, and he didn't care to. His mother had once wished him dead, only to later try to use him for her own ends. He was certain that even if he died, she would sell his corpse for others to study. What do I need to prepare? Bathe and clean myself up to charm the Count's daughter? Like some prize stallion? Master Theodore, if I don't wish to, will you drink tea with her in my place? Forget it, just prepare things as instructed. To his mother, he had never been a son, only an object to be kept for the sake of her position. As for his father, he didn't even bother using him. If it weren't for needing an heir, his father probably wanted him dead just as much as his mother did. Ever since the day he'd watched his older brother collapse before his very eyes, he'd felt trapped in hell. The next day, Vina brought tea to the two of them amid an awkward atmosphere. Although Lady Pablo was quite forward, Theodore remained distant and cold. When she complimented the tea, he simply said he didn't know anything about tea. Vina just wanted to leave as quickly as possible. She didn't want to play third wheel. She stole a glance at the Count's daughter. The woman wasn't just beautiful, she carried an elegant, noble air, somewhat similar to her sister Estella. But everything she said made it clear she truly was a noble lady through and through. She should really just bring the tea and leave quickly. Right then, she noticed Theodore's hand seemed to be trembling. Even if he liked someone, he wasn't the type to tremble in front of a woman. If he actually liked someone, he'd more likely try to keep her locked away. Wait a moment, his eyes had turned red. This was bad. If outsiders found out about the affliction, she turned toward Lady Pablo. "My lady, I'm terribly sorry. It seems today isn't a good day to enjoy tea." The other woman's expression changed instantly. In this world, social rank was drawn in sharp lines. A servant had no business speaking so freely to a noble. So she understood why the Count's daughter was angry. But the situation right now was rather special. Yet a moment later, the woman smiled again. Vina froze. In the end, the woman simply ignored her. "Master Theodore, I won't need any more tea. Please have this servant leave." Vina was completely panicked. She was afraid. Theodore was clearly starting to lose control. His lordship suddenly isn't feeling well. "My lady, please come back another time," she silently pleaded. "Please, leave before he loses consciousness completely. I'm doing this for your sake." Perhaps because she got no response from Theodore, Lady Pablo gave up trying to provoke him further. She stood up and left. Only then did Vina breathe a sigh of relief. But she failed to notice the look the lady gave her just before walking out. Just as she'd feared, Theodore's affliction began to take hold. He looked utterly pained, no longer caring whether things got messy or not. She had to give him bodily fluid. Just as she was about to pull her arm back, Theodore grabbed her. He opened his mouth as if to bite her. Vina closed her eyes, resigned to her fate. But after waiting a while, no pain came. She opened her eyes in astonishment. It turned out he had only leaned against her. She was holding back the pain the affliction caused him. Clearly, all he had to do was bite her and he would regain his senses. But he wouldn't do it. Was it because he didn't want to hurt her? No. "Theodore," Vina said, reaching up to cup his face. Then she kissed him on the lips. Theodore's pupils contracted. Vina's mind raced in confusion. What should she do next? Even though she'd read countless stories. But this was nothing like romance, as she'd never even held a man's hand before. In novels, the male lead was usually the one who took the lead in moments like this. But right now, he had lost all awareness. Just then, the contents of certain novels suddenly came to mind. For the first time, she felt grateful for having read so many books. She tried following what she remembered from those pages. She touched the fang that hadn't fully grown in on Theodore's tooth. The small, sharp little fang looked almost cute, like some little animal. Vina's focus started to slip. What was she supposed to do next? Unexpectedly, right then, Theodore reached out and pulled her closer, taking the initiative to deepen the kiss. Vina told herself this was all just to cure Theodore while he was losing his mind. It was only about sharing bodily fluid with him. It didn't carry any deeper meaning or feeling. At least that's how it should have been. Sujin was the first to notice something was off about her. "What happened to your mouth?" Sure enough, her lips were swollen from being bitten. Eventually, Odie came and carried the unconscious Theodore away. That was after his pupils had returned to their normal purple color. Besides the lingering feeling on her lips, the expression on Theodore's face at that moment stayed with her too. Little Sujin thought his friend looked really strange. Her lips were swollen and red, she kept zoning out while talking, and she seemed to be carrying a lot on her mind. More importantly, she hadn't prepared its dinner. After all, her first kiss across both of her lifetimes was gone, and on top of that, Theodore had bitten her lip until it tore. Saying she didn't care would be a lie. And besides, he was also the one who kept her fed and housed. Thinking of the look on his face before he left, she figured he probably wouldn't remember any of it this time either. Vina suddenly stood up. She had to go check whether Theodore had recovered. Little Sujin was left behind again. "You're supposedly part of the great demon race, so go find your own food." He'd seemed calm again yesterday, but she still wanted to confirm his condition with her own eyes. "Hey!" a voice called out to her. "Someone's looking for you in the back garden." When she asked who it was, the girl who told her looked frightened. "I don't know either, just hurry and go." So another person who believed the witch legend, huh? But there was no need to run away just from seeing her. She'd better just go quickly and come right back. She never expected that the moment she reached the back garden, she'd be attacked. "What is this? Who are you?" A maid glared at her with open hostility. Vina reacted instantly, grabbing the woman with one hand and hurling her aside with full force. She was famous for her incredible strength after all. The maid lay on the ground, stunned. What kind of strength was that? What an absolute fool. Was it really so hard to make a girl half your height kneel down? Lady Pablo appeared, strolling in without any hurry. "It's so hot out, I wanted to head back early. Nothing ever goes the way I want. A mere maid like you dared to insult me yesterday. How should I deal with you to satisfy my anger? I never meant to insult you, my lady. There were circumstances I couldn't avoid. Whatever the reason, someone like you has no right to humiliate me in front of Theodore." But that was a matter of life and death. How was she supposed to explain herself without mentioning Theodore's affliction, Elsa? Along with that order, the maid forced her down again. "How dare you talk back in front of me? Kneel on that filthy ground." She'd nearly forgotten this was a world with clearly drawn class lines. For nobles, dealing with commoners was as easy as crushing an ant. The woman was just in a foul mood and looking for someone to take it out on, just like her father used to be. At this point, there was only one thing she could do: beg for forgiveness. By the time evening came, she'd lost count of how many times she'd said, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." But the Count's daughter still didn't look satisfied. Was she still not pleased? When was the last time she'd been struck like this? Her father used to hit her often before. It was only after coming here that those days had finally ended. Thinking back on it now, the people here had treated her so well that she'd almost forgotten the world wasn't full of only kind people. "Why have you stopped apologizing? Who do you think you're performing for?" She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the slap that was about to land. But this time it never came. "What are all of you doing here?" "Huh?" Vina was surprised. So it was Ishut. "This is the private residence of the Grand Duke of House Caro. Outsiders are not permitted to enter without leave. Please, all of you, leave at once. Do you even know who Our Lady is that you dare give us orders?" "My apologies. I only know how to tell men from women, not nobles from commoners, so I have no idea who you are. I am Lord Theodore's knight, Ishut Klaus. My duty is to guard this place." Seeing that the man was a noble knight, Pablo's attitude shifted instantly. "I'm Camilla Pablo. Pablo, yesterday I had afternoon tea with Lord Theodore because the Duchess invited me." This same woman who had just been so vicious toward her switched her attitude the moment she saw the other person was also a noble. What a shameless display right before her eyes. But something very unpleasant happened during that tea, which is why I was disciplining this maid who insulted me. Seeing Ishut look her way, Vina shook her head. She'd been wronged. Ishut sighed. "I can understand my lady's feelings," he said, and her heart clenched. That was right. Ishut was a noble too, so it was only natural he wouldn't believe her. But all she wanted was to save Theodore and this woman as well. In this world, only her sister trusted her unconditionally, yet Theodore always protected his own people. If the lady wished to become one of his people, she really ought to understand this. Well said. As if a mere maid could be counted among Theodore's people. "As for this," Ishut said, reaching a hand toward her and speaking quietly. "Quickly, take my hand." Vina didn't understand, but she reached out anyway, and he suddenly pulled her up. "She's likely not just some ordinary maid. Once she truly becomes one of Theodore's people, you'll understand what I mean." Ishut even sounded smug as he provoked Pablo. Vina wanted to cry. What on earth was he saying? Why keep antagonizing the Count's daughter and stirring up more resentment? Seeing the terrifying look in the woman's eyes, Vina felt like she was about to be devoured alive. She couldn't understand why Ishut would help her like this. His actions were bound to earn him the Count's daughter's enmity. And yet, in that moment, Ishut looked truly dependable. Pablo eventually gave up, but before leaving, she spat out some venomous words and made sure to remember Ishut too. What should she do now? It seemed she had dragged Ishut into trouble. The man suddenly took her hand, looking worried. "Are you all right? I'm fine." Clearly something was wrong. "Your face is covered in wounds, and your hand is bleeding too. We need to get that treated." Come with me. Watching Ishit's back as he led the way, Veena felt she finally understood why some readers loved gentle male side characters so much. Elsewhere, Theodore was also searching for Veena. The last time he'd had an episode, he'd had no memory of it, but this time he remembered every detail clearly. He was so unsettled that the moment he woke up, he went looking for her. At that moment, Ishit was in a room tending to Veena's wounds. The knight and his maid were making strange noises coming from the room. Theodore burst in without hesitation, only to discover the two of them were simply treating her injuries. Her face was covered in bruises, and Ishit was using cotton to disinfect the wounds. The man froze, then felt ashamed of the indecent thoughts that had crossed his mind. It wasn't until Veena spoke up, Lord Theodore, that he finally snapped back to his senses. Please, you two carry on. With that, he shut the door and left immediately, leaving the two of them baffled by what had just happened. By the time Odie found him, he still hadn't fully recovered from what had just occurred. My lord, are you feeling unwell? Please head back to your room right away. I'll summon your personal physician immediately. Theodore quickened his pace and walked off without looking back. I'm fine. Then I'll have the kitchen prepare something easy to digest today. Or is there something in particular you'd like to eat? At the mention of food, the man paused. Pudding. However, he didn't order it for himself. He ordered it for Veena. He had the kitchen make a large batch, yet he himself only ate one. The pudding reached her hands by a different route. The girl who brought the pudding to her was named Claire. At first, Claire had been afraid of her because of the witch legend, but by now the two of them got along well. Claire often made mistakes and got scolded by Odie, and Veena would stay by her side and take the scolding with her. Because she was injured, Claire and Auntie Rita told her to rest, saying they'd handle all her work for her. Aside from those who'd helped her the day before, there were plenty of other kind people around her here too. As she was reflecting on all this, a sharp little voice suddenly piped up. What happened to your face? It looks awful. Don't ask. This thing is delicious. Let's eat together. You got hurt this badly and you're already this happy over a little food? It's really not that serious. But no matter how ungrateful you act after she feeds you, this guy sure knows how to worry about you. Damn it, who on earth dared to hurt my underling like this? Little Sujin was quick to flip sides. She didn't feel like paying it any mind. But in the end, she told it anyway. The little slime grew furious. So this is what happened after you got hit? Tell me where that Count's daughter is. Forget it, Sujin. Don't bring it up again. That's someone who hated me enough to actually hit me, so I don't want to think about her anymore. I'd rather remember the people who like me and the people I like in return. Like Ishut, who rescued me and helped treat my wounds. Claire, who brought me pudding and hoped I'd get better soon. Odie and Auntie Rita, who worried about me, and you too, getting all angry on my behalf. The little slime turned even more pink. It seemed it had been touched. Thinking it over, there was one more person she owed gratitude to, Theodore. But that gratitude only lasted a single day. The very next day, he gave her quite a shock. A shock? Get ready. Get ready for what? You still haven't spent the money I gave you before, have you? I'll take you out to spend it. Veena's whole world came crashing down. That was the small fund she and her sister had been saving up. A few hours earlier, Ishit had suggested that Theodore beef up security at the private residence. But all the troops were under the command of the Grand Duke of Karo, that is, his father. So he didn't have much authority to intervene. Actually, yesterday I discovered that someone had entered the back garden without permission. She claimed to be Lady Pablo. Pablo. You're sure that was yesterday, not the day before? It was yesterday. This confused Theodore, because she had been invited to visit 2 days ago. That would mean it was the day he'd nearly had an episode, the day Veena had helped calm him down. The memory surfacing in his mind made him turn away to hide his expression. Eventually, Ishut told him about Veena getting hurt, because she had only told others that she'd fallen. So he was probably the only one in the whole Grand Duke's household who knew that Veena had been struck by the Count's daughter. No wonder he'd seen Ishut applying medicine to her that day. That explained it. Theodore's whole demeanor shifted completely. What was that lady's name? Camilla Pablo. Countess's daughter, Camilla Pablo, is it? I'll remember that. Veena's body had recovered enough that she volunteered to go back to work. After all, she couldn't keep relying on others forever. When she brought tea to see Theodore, she ran into Ishit just as he was walking out. After exchanging greetings, Ishit kept staring intently at her. You're looking much better now. I was too panicked yesterday to thank you properly. Thank you for helping me. I didn't do it to be thanked. He hadn't finished his sentence yet. He'd been drawn in by her hair. It looked soft and smooth. By the time he realized it, his hand had already reached out to touch it. Why are you touching my head? Ishit burst out laughing. From now on, try not to provoke people like that anymore. While the two of them were chatting happily, someone suddenly threw the door open. The two of you look awfully cheerful, chatting right outside my door. In Ishut's eyes, Veena was like an adorable little puppy. That description was actually pretty accurate. After walking into the room, Theodore put on an icy expression, staring at her intently without saying a word. She tried to greet him first, but he simply turned his face away. In truth, Theodore was just embarrassed. Every time he saw her face, he was reminded of the two of them kissing the day before yesterday. And her wound still hadn't healed, yet here she was rushing over to bring him tea. He hoped Veena could rest for a few more days. Could it be she was just too bored? Actually, I heard from Odie that you've never once left the estate. If that's the case, then go get ready. Veena's world came crashing down again. Theodore wanted to take her out to spend money. And that was the very fun she'd been saving up to return and live with her sister. When she picked up an outfit at the clothing shop, her mood hit rock bottom. What kind of outfit costs 4.35 million coins? No wonder Theodore had compensated her with 2 million coins. She had absolutely no need for such high-end clothing. Thinking that the male lead assumed she had no time to go shopping and had kindly decided to come along only made her heart ache more. It wasn't that she had no chance to buy things. It was that she didn't want to. And to make things worse, he'd taken her to an extremely high-end boutique. Just as she was about to pick the cheapest dress and get out of there, a woman suddenly snapped at her. What do you think you're doing? The dress in her hand was snatched away. You've been sneaking around fingering the merchandise this whole time. What exactly are you after? I was just looking. Do you have any idea how expensive this dress is? This is absolutely not something someone like you could ever afford. Now that you understand, get out of here. You're telling me to get out? Is there anyone else here besides you? And you don't even know your place talking back like that. Veena lowered her head, enduring the clerk's scolding. Why are your fists clenched? Are you thinking of hitting me? She muttered under her breath. Honestly, thank you for saying that. That was right. It wasn't that she didn't want to buy it. It was that she couldn't afford it. This woman had already told her to leave, so what else could she do? Veena was overjoyed at having saved herself a huge sum of money. Now she had the perfect excuse to get past Theodore. The pragmatic clerk was thrown off by her reaction. Are you out of your mind? Veena grabbed the woman's hand. That's right. These clothes really are too expensive for me. Just then, Theodore suddenly appeared. Is there a problem here? The woman froze. This man was dressed exactly like a powerful noble. The cash cow had arrived, and she quickly moved to block Veena. Veena stepped left, and the woman stepped left too. Veena stepped right, and the woman stepped right too. She even waved her hand, gesturing for Veena to hurry up and leave. It was a bit irritating, but she understood. After all, unlike Theodore, one glance and she'd known Veena was a commoner. Unexpectedly, Theodore pulled her back. I want to know what you've done to my friend. That single sentence left both women stunned. Veena glanced at him secretly. Theodore actually looked angry. No wonder she was in business. She really knew how to read a situation. I'm terribly sorry, it seems my eyes failed me. I didn't realize this person was your friend. It seems you still don't know how to apologize properly, and besides, I'm not the one you should be apologizing to. Only then did the woman realize where she'd gone wrong. She solemnly apologized to Veena to show her sincerity. Now that that's settled, let me show the two of you to our VIP section. No, I don't want to buy anything here at all. She screamed internally, please just let me leave. That's true. After being treated like that, it's only natural you wouldn't want to buy anything here. Let's go check out another shop. Veena glanced back at the pragmatic clerk, who now looked full of regret for having offended a noble. She suddenly felt a rush of exhilaration. So this was what it felt like to be protected by the male lead in a novel. Hearing that they weren't satisfied with this shop, Ishit thought for a moment. This is already the largest women's clothing store around. There's one even more expensive place across the way. Veena immediately cut him off. No, wait, it's getting late, we should head home. The red-haired knight started to object, saying it was nowhere near evening yet. Ishit, keep quiet to avoid a repeat of what just happened. Theodore made his decision. I'll go into the next shop with you myself. Veena wanted to cry. Was she really being forced to buy clothes? Lord Theodore, I'd actually prefer cash. I'm truly grateful for your concern, and I understand that you want to make up for ruining my clothes. But realistically, I won't have the chance to wear those dresses. So I'd much rather have the money instead. Noticing Ishit struggling to hold back laughter, she shot the culprit a glare. Once you're fully recovered, I'll have completed my task. At that point, I'd like to leave the estate and live with the person I love. Theodore froze, feeling a sharp pang in his chest. Veena meant she wanted to live with her sister, but Ishit assumed she already had someone in her heart. All Theodore had registered was that she wanted to leave this place. The male lead of the novel, cold and closed off, now sat before this girl looking just like an obedient little puppy. Worn out, Veena fell right back asleep the moment she got in the carriage. Theodore simply watched her the entire ride. She really must be exhausted. But wasn't it uncomfortable to sleep like that? Thinking back on what she'd just said, the man's gaze dropped. She'd said that from now on, she wanted to live with the person she loved. Veena seemed like someone who was always full of hope for life, no matter the circumstances. It was the complete opposite of him. From the very first time Theodore's affliction had struck, he had felt nothing but despair at a fate already sealed, because he had witnessed with his own eyes the final outcome of the affliction, and knew he too would die just as tragically. Even his own parents called him a monster, let alone anyone else. But in truth, today's shopping trip had only been an excuse. He'd heard Veena had been slapped, and felt guilty, so he wanted to take her out to help her relax. In the end, it was she who ended up indulging him instead. Just then, Veena suddenly shook her head. It turned out a strand of hair had gotten in her eye. He carefully brushed the strand of hair away from her eye, only to hear her murmur, "Don't." Theodore snatched his hand back. He began to hate himself. That was right. If he hadn't had the affliction, Veena would never have been brought to the estate, and she wouldn't have been bullied by others like this either. It made perfect sense that she hated him. But then, unexpectedly, the girl mumbled in her sleep, "I really can't eat anymore, I'll get fat." Theodore froze. What on earth was she dreaming about? But I still want that pudding. With just that one line, his heart felt as if it had been squeezed tight. In his father's eyes, a witch was nothing more than a tool for curing the berserk affliction. So he told himself that his sudden urge to kiss her was just the effect of her mana and his craving for her bodily fluids. Just then, the carriage shook violently, and he steadied her head so she wouldn't hit the wall. Realizing his thoughts were running wild, Theodore let out a laugh. He knocked on the window and had the driver slow down a little, though that meant they would be late. "It's fine, just drive a little slower to be safe." He had never heard that simply looking at a witch could bring peace to the soul and kindle hope. Veena had given him a thought. If he could stay by her side, perhaps his ending wouldn't be so tragic after all. As a child, Theodore used to run off alone to the mountain behind the estate to cry in secret. Sometimes someone would come looking for him. Let's go back together. He stood frozen where he was. That person's hands were covered in blood. "What's wrong, Theodore? Your hands are the same." Poor Theodore, the child who inherited the cursed bloodline. "The great heir of House Caro. You're just like me. Hope is only your illusion. You can't escape this tragic fate." He sank into darkness once again, but this time, the world had been lit up. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Veena, what are you doing?" "I brought you some tea, but seeing you asleep, I wanted to cover your feet." So it had only been a dream. But why had it startled him so badly? "Well, the temperature swings between day and night have been quite severe lately. My sister says weather like this makes it easy to catch a cold. So I figured, it seems you and your sister get along very well." "Of course. My sister is the one who raised and took care of me since I was little." "How old is she to have raised you?" She's 22. Our mother passed away when we were very young. I can't say any more than that." If she stirred up Theodore's curiosity about her sister, everything would fall apart, and the story would return to its original course. "Are you an only child?" In the novel, the reason no one interfered with Theodore's misdeeds was that he was the sole heir of House Caro. So surely Theodore must be an only child. "No, I once had an older brother." Veena froze, but the novel never mentioned this at all. Wasn't the eldest son supposed to inherit the title? What happened? Don't tell me your brother turned out to be some hopeless scoundrel or ran off with some commoner lady. "So where is your brother now?" Theodore's voice stayed calm. "He's dead. He died from the berserk affliction 18 years ago. Right in front of me. No, this is moving far too fast. She had only just learned Theodore had a brother, and now he was already dead. Didn't he find a witch back then, like me? No, he did find one, so why? Theodore looked at her quietly. Because after the affliction took hold, he lost control of himself and killed that witch. After the witch died, my brother's affliction grew even worse, so my father had him eliminated. I witnessed my brother's death with my own eyes, and the whole process of him hurting others. Vina didn't know exactly what the relationship between the two brothers had been, but she understood how terrifying it was for a family member to commit such an act and then be destroyed himself. Seeing her tremble, he thought to himself, "Of course, this story must have frightened her. If you wish, you may go back now." To his surprise, she suddenly grabbed a cloth and wrapped it tightly around him. Theodore's face turned red. What is this? Don't worry, you will absolutely never have to go through anything like that. From now on, only good things will happen. Besides, I'm very healthy. I won't die so easily. Wrapped up tight like a rice cake, Theodore muttered. This feels strange. Realizing she had overstepped, Vina quietly stepped back. This is a kind of comfort therapy. Being wrapped up like this makes people feel calm and safe. The man asked, sounding doubtful. Is that really true? That excuse clearly wasn't working. I'm sorry, I really didn't mean anything else by it. I just wanted you to feel better. Theodore's mood had indeed improved. And in a way, he felt a certain warmth as well. Late that night, Vina once again couldn't sleep. When she'd read the novel, she never understood why Theodore was so cold and unfeeling. Now she felt she understood a little. 18 years ago, he had been so young. No wonder she had once pitied him in a way she couldn't quite explain. And that was why, when the affliction struck, he sometimes seemed as helpless as a lost child. Because that child still lived on inside his heart. What would it be like if you saw your own sister kill someone? That can't be. My sister is far too gentle for that. It's hard to imagine. Try imagining it again. Calmly holding a knife, her face cold as ice, stepping closer to her prey. No wonder she's your Estella. She'd be beautiful even doing that. Sujin jolted awake, wore a look of exasperation. Have you lost your mind? Oh, you're awake. Good, help me think of something. Come on, she told Theodore's story to Sujin. You're talking about the master of this house? You want him to be happy? He's rich. He's surely living better than you already. What are you doing with so much free time on your hands? But happiness is priceless. That's just because you can't afford it. Even without money, my sister and I lived very happily together. If you had money, you'd have been even happier. She had nothing to say to that. But there are ways to be happy without spending money too. Like a female pleasing a male. What are you talking about? She really did want to do something for him, but not that. Is a massage really something to be embarrassed about? Wait, did you say massage? What else would it be? So why did you even bring up male and female? Because a male giving another male a massage is disgusting. Anyway, getting a massage improves your mood. And a good mood means no more sadness. Vina suddenly scooped Sujin up. You're right, Sujin really is a genius. That's right. The opposite of a dark, tragic story is turning a suffering protagonist happy. She was going to turn this novel into a healing story. But what exactly was a healing story? In her past life, she'd read every genre imaginable. From seductive modern fantasies to tales about aliens. But without exception, in the end, the protagonists all turned into the most horrifying villains. The one genre she had never read was healing fiction. Strangely, she could remember every book she'd read in her past life, yet she had no memory of how she had died. Hey, why did you stop? Hurry up and keep praising me. After being massaged, Sujin grew round and plump. It looked quite pleased with itself. That's true. No matter how her past life had been, that life was already over. The present was what mattered most now. But what exactly was healing fiction in the end? Sujin, when do you feel happiest? Obviously, when the whole world is under my rule. All right, that has nothing to do with healing at all. I'm also happy when you feed me something really delicious. But surely Theodore already eats far better than I do. And I also love sleeping next to you. Didn't I already tell you you have a pleasant scent on you that makes me happy? Just sleeping beside you gives me beautiful dreams. Sujin, so you actually have such sweet thoughts after all. I don't feel lonely either having you as company. This little friendship talk is over. I get it now. Can I sleep now? Forget it. What did she expect from a slime like this anyway? So the way to heal Theodore was good food and lots of sleep? For some unknown reason, she found herself being scrutinized from head to toe by a man. Carrying tea and pouring water, is that even real work? And yet you have the nerve to eat so much. So lazy you don't even bother combing your hair, yet you strut around everywhere. She explained that her hair was naturally curly, that she'd been born that way, and that her duties were assigned by Odie and had nothing to do with her. But the man wouldn't let it go. Why does even old Rita dote only on you while the rest of us have to get up at dawn to work? She couldn't very well say that her job was dangerous, and that she had to use her bodily fluids to save her master. This big fellow certainly couldn't take her place in being drained by Theodore. But the more the man scolded her, the more he pressed on, since everyone else only held back out of deference to her being a witch. They should never have hired her in the first place. Her laziness only added to everyone else's workload. Seeing the crowd around her grow larger, she felt her anger rising. She couldn't hold back any longer. "Claire, where's the axe?" Claire trembled in fear. "Vina, violence isn't the way to solve this." Very quickly, the group gathered on the mountain behind the estate. She was determined to teach this man a lesson. "Claire, the axe is for chopping firewood, not people. Didn't you say yourself that chopping wood every day is exhausting? Well then, today I'll chop a bit extra so you can rest for a while. What could a little thing like you possibly chop? I bet you just want to go tattle to Odie that I'm bullying you." She suddenly no longer wanted to chop wood. She wanted to chop something else. "Then how about this? Let's see who can chop more firewood in 1 minute. If you lose, you never get to pry into my work again. Why would I even compete with a kid like you? If I lose, I'll give you 20% of my monthly pay. If you're not confident, you can back out now." The man thought to himself, "Isn't this basically a guaranteed profit? Fine. If you win, I'll help shut everyone else up. Then it's settled." Vina picked up the axe. "I'll go first." The man thought gleefully, "No matter how much she begs and cries afterward, her wages are already mine. I hold the record here. Go on then. What could someone with such skinny arms possibly manage?" In case any viewers have forgotten, let us remind you, Vina used to be the strongest child in her village. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Theodore sat lost in thought. Odie noticed he hadn't turned a single page in nearly half an hour. "Odie, do you know what a happy rice roll is?" The man was stunned. Clearly, he had no idea. If he didn't know, then he'd have to go ask Vina after all. He was only curious, he told himself, certainly not looking forward to afternoon tea. But if Vina wasn't bringing the tea, what was she doing instead? She was busy teaching a man a lesson. The onlookers cheered, "Amazing!" The girl had chopped 28 logs in 1 minute. Noah had only managed 10. Do witches naturally have such incredible strength? Vina picked up a log and waved it over the man's head. "Honor your promise." She had finally vented her anger. This time, no one would dare pick a fight with her again. Claire cautiously approached her. "Vina, let's head back now." Since she hadn't eaten breakfast, her stomach had been growling meaningfully for a while now. Damn it, because of that man I couldn't eat a thing. "Vina, are you hungry? Let's go see if there are any leftovers in the dining hall." The two of them left, unaware that this whole incident had already begun changing how everyone viewed her. Is she really a witch? No, she's just strong, that's all. Claire also said she's a good kid. After hard labor, she gets hungry just like the rest of us. I really want some kimchi fried rice, but there's none here. What's kimchi? Something that could really be made well here. I'm happy right now. That's right. Theodore has already had his fill of every delicacy imaginable, so giving him something he's never tried before should work. Claire, let's head to the kitchen. Not long after, Theodore had become a guinea pig. An unidentifiable dish appeared on his table. It's clearly tea time right now, so what on earth is this enormous thing? You could think of it as a snack. I made this especially for you today, so please enjoy it with all your heart. A few hours earlier, Vina and Claire had been bustling about the kitchen, trying to prepare a Korean-style meal for Theodore. But their excitement was quickly crushed by reality. They simply didn't have enough ingredients. Images of familiar dishes like kimchi soup, braised beef, or tteokbokki flashed through her mind one after another, only to fade away. Vina's face turned pale as she realized there was simply no way to find kimchi, soy sauce, or gochujang in this world. She wanted to cry. How could characters in healing stories so easily cook dishes like these in an unfamiliar world? But then an idea suddenly flashed through her mind. That's it. If it's chicken, it can be done. Her face lit up with sudden determination. Let's make fried chicken. Suddenly, the two of them fell silent, staring at each other, as a flock of crows cawed past overhead. Vina hesitantly spoke up. Claire, do you know how to make fried chicken? Claire answered calmly. Yes, I do. It turned out that this world had not only fried chicken, but also fried fish and various other simple fried dishes. That realization left Vina crestfallen. Why had she foolishly assumed no one in this world had ever made fried chicken before? But then another idea flashed into her mind. What about seasoned chicken, then? Vina smiled triumphantly once again, only to collapse in despair a moment later. There still was no gochujang to be found. After 1,000 failures and getting back up each time, they ended up cooking spaghetti, since the ingredients were easy to find here, mixing it with the chef's special chicken sauce and cream sauce to create a soft, rose-colored sauce. To replace the gochujang, they added a bit of red pepper powder and boosted the sweetness with a generous amount of sugar. To keep some chewiness, they tossed in a few pieces of squid in place of fish cake. Vina's special dish was complete. As she set the dish in front of Theodore, Vina excitedly introduced it as a special dish from her hometown. Theodore simply stared at it, unable to understand what was in front of him. Could she possibly be trying to poison him? Meanwhile, she was still feeling smug about her cooking, thinking maybe he'd find it so delicious he'd ask her to become his personal chef, hehe. But reality was far crueler. After bringing just one bite of noodles to his mouth, Theodore set down his fork, covered his mouth, and said quietly, "I can't eat this. It's too strange." Those words tore through Vina's chef dreams like a knife, leaving her frozen stiff. Inside, she screamed, shouldn't he be praising it and asking for more? Why was reality so different from what she'd imagined? Theodore calmly remarked that the dish was too spicy and too sweet at once, and there even seemed to be a taste of honey mixed with the lingering flavor of fish. Seeing the disappointment on her face as she stared intently at him, he stopped talking. In the end, Theodore turned away and let out a quiet sigh. "I'd like some tea." Night had fallen over the grand estate. Under the moonlight and stars, Vina sat quietly in front of the plate of food she had made with her own hands. She tried tasting it herself, but immediately spat it out, horrified by the chaotic mix of spicy, sweet, and fishy flavors all blending into something impossible to swallow. What surprised her even more was that Theodore hadn't punished her after eating that. She leaned back, lost in thought about the meals of days past. Her sister Estella had always been the one to cook, while she only had to eat or go fetch ingredients. Now she finally understood why. A faint happiness crossed Vina's face as she remembered the mother who always cooked for her in her past life. A kind, gentle mother, a kindergarten teacher with a soft smile and pretty dimples. Vina rested her chin in her hand wistfully, wishing she could remember her mother in this life too. According to what Estella had told her, their mother in this life had also been kind and warm, and very beautiful too. Estella said their mother had looked like an angel every time she sang her to sleep. Even just imagining it made her heart ache with longing. Vina pulled herself back together and gave a small smile. Never mind, she still had her sister Estella after all. And more importantly, she had to find a way to make Theodore happy. If the spaghetti had failed, she would think of something else. Determination burned inside her, all for the sake of Theodore's appetite. On the other side, Theodore couldn't stop thinking about Vina either. He recalled the image of her pouring her whole heart into that dish, her eyes sparkling as she waited for his praise, then trembling as she heard his verdict. In the end, he murmured to himself, blushing, that was rather endearing, wasn't it? Standing by the window gazing at the gentle moonlight, he wondered whether she was already asleep by now, or still buried in some strange scheme of hers. I miss her, he thought. But the darkness wouldn't leave him in peace. A shadowy figure suddenly appeared behind him, an eerie voice whispering close to his ear. "What did you say, a monster and a witch? You've done all this simply because you like her. But in the end, you're still a monster and you'll still end up killing her." Oh, there's no escaping that fate. Those words twisted deep like a blade, making Theodore clutch his head and gasp for breath, sweat pouring down like rain. How could a monster ever hope to hold on to a bit of sunlight for himself? Early the next morning, Vina threw herself once again with full energy into farming. A most therapeutic activity indeed. Claire watched her with eyes full of admiration. "Amazing, Vina. You really managed to harvest so many sweet potatoes in just one go." There she was, still hard at work digging up more sweet potatoes. Hearing the praise, she beamed with delight. Recalling the night before, after failing to heal him with a delicious meal, she had collapsed exhausted and slept soundly. Suddenly, a memory from her past life surfaced. She hadn't read that genre because it wasn't age-restricted, but she clearly remembered that quite a few healing stories had garden scenes on their covers. So it seemed that healing required labor. Right now, Vina's mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts. How long had it been since she'd last done real work? Soaking up a bit of sunshine along with the crisp, cool air wrapping around the fields. Working under Mother Nature's gentle care, sweat pouring down from her efforts, feeling the light scent of the earth. Perhaps this was why farming held such an important place in healing stories. She really had worked without a single worry weighing on her. Surely that meant she was being healed. This was so much fun, incredibly fun. Suddenly, the smile on Vina's lips froze stiff. What exactly was the point of doing all this to heal him? There was no way a noble like Theodore would ever touch gardening work. Theodore could, at most, stroll through a garden. The only contact he'd ever have with a harvest would be on the dining table. He was a nobleman, the kind of person who would never let even a fingertip get dirty with soil. She couldn't possibly tell him to go do gardening. She'd lose her head before he'd ever agree to get dirty. While Vina wept in despair, Odie walked by and looked at her, puzzled. It's not even hot enough right now to make anyone dizzy. Once inside, Odie, with an expressionless face, told Vina that she had never once taken a day off. This sounded exactly like what Theodore had said about her spending her own money. Vina felt as if she'd been struck. This isn't what you think, is it? She suddenly shrank back, asking nervously and fearfully, "Is my emergency fund in danger again?" Odie calmly explained, "That's not it. Everyone else on staff has already used up their leave allowance. I noticed this morning that you seemed very tense. Why not use your leave to get some rest?" Vina stubbornly pressed on. "But if I take time off, what will happen to Theodore?" Odie tried to reassure her. "As long as you don't go too far from the estate, everything will be fine. Besides, Theodore slept very well last night. You don't need to worry so much." Hearing him say that, Vina was stunned. Weren't male leads in cursed bloodline stories supposed to be tormented by nightmares and insomnia? If he was sleeping well, then why did she have to go through all this trouble to heal him? Could this be the power of some 19-plus genre thing, where just 2 hours of sleep is enough to fully recharge? Never getting exhausted, the male lead always brimming with energy every morning. Odie placed a hand on Vina's shoulder, trying to convince her. "Overall, working hard is good, but you shouldn't neglect rest either. So just tell me if you need anything." With that, Odie turned and walked away. Vina watched his retreating back, still thoroughly bewildered. Had he really come all this way just to say that? Her first impression of him hadn't been good, but now she felt it was, well, not so bad after all. The moment Odie stepped outside, he ran straight into Claire. Startled, she let out an involuntary scream. Staring at Odie's handsome face, Claire's eyes turned to hearts, completely oblivious to the world around her. Odie asked flatly, straight to the point, "Why did you dare scream in my face like that, Claire the maid?" Hearing her name called, Claire jolted back to her senses. Witnessing the whole scene, Vina found herself speechless, quietly taking back the kind words she'd just uttered. Watching Claire apologize in a panic, Vina felt deep sympathy for her in that moment. Just as Vina was about to step in to smooth things over, she suddenly let out a surprised gasp. To her astonishment, Odie sighed and admitted the fault was his own. With that, Odie even gently patted Claire's head to comfort her. The little demon inside Vina was now shrieking nonstop. But before she could finish her fantasy, Claire came up beside her and cut in. With impeccable logic, Claire wailed in despair, "Does Lord Odie plan to hit me on the head next time?" That remark left her speechless, and the little demon that hadn't even fully appeared yet had to retreat. Vina patted her helplessly, explaining, "It's not like that. Earlier he touched my shoulder too, just to encourage me." Hearing this, with her usual straightforward yet oddly twisted logic, Claire cried out in fear again. "Your hand! He must be warning that he'll break your arm next. What did you do wrong, Vina? You're the only one who's made this whole thing sound terrifying from start to finish." Even so, Claire still cowered in fear. Suddenly, Vina remembered to ask why Claire had come to her room in the first place. Claire's request wasn't difficult. Since the weather was turning cold, they needed to light the stove in Theodore's room every night. So she asked Vina to light the stove in the area she was supposed to handle, since she had some other matter to attend to. Vina figured she'd be finished before Theodore returned. She was lost in thought when, seeing the firewood already burning, she couldn't help but mutter, mouth watering. A fire like this would be perfect for roasting sweet potatoes. Should I sneak one in? Without her noticing, Theodore had already sat down beside her. Hearing what she said, he spoke up. "Didn't you just eat not long ago?" Vina instinctively turned to look at him, too startled to say a word. A moment later, she quickly composed herself and greeted him politely. But Theodore's mind was on something else entirely. "I didn't think lighting the stove was one of your duties. Did someone force you to do this?" She couldn't figure out what he meant. Vina blinked in confusion. What was he even talking about? Vina turned to him, puzzled. "Why would you think I was forced into doing this?" It turned out Theodore had heard that she'd recently had a conflict with another servant. Even though Odie said there was no issue, he was still worried she was being bullied by someone. She lowered her head, embarrassed. No, that's not what happened at all." "Then why are you doing this?" She instantly found herself at a loss for words. Well, her mind raced, scrambling for an excuse. A few hours earlier, Claire, practically in tears, had begged her to take over lighting the stove in Theodore's room. Worried, she'd asked her dear friend what was wrong. Right at that moment, a sudden fart broke the silence in the air. Vina froze. That sound explained everything perfectly. Because Vina had dug up so many sweet potatoes today, she'd ended up eating way too many, and her stomach had been acting up like this since morning. That was the real reason. But how was she supposed to explain that to Theodore now? Vina parted her lips and blurted out a fabricated excuse. "Well, I just wanted to help you out, so you don't need to worry about it." Theodore studied Vina carefully. She didn't seem to be lying. "Oh, so what are you planning to roast?" she answered, embarrassed. "Sweet potatoes." "Sweet potatoes? I thought those were only used as garnish for steak at dinner." Vina, at a loss for words, began to explain. "This is roasted directly over the fire." A moment later, a look of pure infatuation spread across her face. Sweet potatoes roasted over an open fire are so much sweeter and richer. When you crack it open, that golden color shows through. The gentle, sweet aroma of the potato drifts straight into your nose. If you can handle the heat and blow on it a little as you eat, it's absolutely incredible. Theodore sat quietly listening. His deep purple eyes stayed fixed intently on the person beside him. In his eyes, Vina's face was now lit up with a radiant smile. Happiness spread across her whole face. The corner of Theodore's mouth curved upward. His gaze grew gentler than it had ever been before. "Then I'd like to have some too." Those words left her frozen in place. Vina trembled as she looked at him, kneeling on one knee beside her. What did it mean for the male lead of a 19-plus story to suddenly look at her and say he wanted to have some? Theodore closed his eyes and clicked his tongue. Tsk. Then he explained. "I meant I'd like to have some roasted sweet potato." Hearing that, she relaxed at once. Oh, it was just about the sweet potato. A few minutes later, Theodore held a sweet potato in his hand, praising how delicious it was. Watching the scene before her, Vina forced a smile. She never imagined the sweet potato Claire gave her would end up being useful like this. The male lead was holding a roasted sweet potato and eating it with relish. She had never imagined that a male lead and a sweet potato could ever cross paths like this. She was quite surprised when he said he wanted to hold it with his hands instead of using a fork and plate. She should have given him something special and delicious instead of this humble roasted potato to try to heal him. Meanwhile, Theodore was seriously splitting the sweet potato in half. "Ah, so wrapping it in damp paper keeps it from burning too much." Hearing that, she agreed. "That's right. I usually eat the small ones that can't be sold, so there's no need to wrap them in paper, though they do need to roast a bit longer." Beside her, Theodore suddenly held out half of the sweet potato toward Vina. "You want some too, don't you?" Startled, she raised both hands to refuse. "No, how could I possibly eat alongside you, my lord?" The very next moment, Vina's stomach betrayed her completely, growling loudly. With a completely straight face, Theodore teased her. "Your stomach seems to be calling for it." In tears, she took the half-sweet potato. "Then I'll accept it." Vina took a huge bite that puffed out both her cheeks. So delicious. He suddenly looked straight into her eyes. "Is that the person you love you mentioned before?" Startled by the question, Vina froze. "You were just thinking about him, weren't you?" At those words, Vina unconsciously raised her hands to cover her forehead. Seeing this reaction, Theodore froze as well, his own cheeks slowly turning red too. Helpless in front of Vina, he wondered if she was worried he could read her mind. The words "no way" appeared so plainly on her face that Theodore burst out laughing, his whole body shaking uncontrollably. Suddenly, her eyes widened as if she'd just realized something. Theodore was laughing. After everything, it seemed Theodore was just like her. She'd simply been overthinking things. He too could be happy even without fancy food. An unassuming roasted sweet potato could still make a person happy, simply from eating it together with someone else. Could Theodore possibly be thinking the same thing as her? Vina gazed thoughtfully at the stove in front of her. Maybe I'm not the female lead, but... Before she could finish the thought, Theodore suddenly reached out and pressed his hand to her cheek. Vina's eyes widened in surprise, while he simply watched her quietly, saying nothing. His thumb gently brushed against her lower lip, then drew closer still. As their lips drew near, Vina silently screamed inside, "Wait a moment!" She squeezed her eyes shut, her face flushed pink. Theodore suddenly spoke coolly. "There's a smudge of dirt on your face." Vina was so embarrassed she wanted to disappear on the spot. Flustered, she explained, I suppose it's because I kept eating the sweet potato and didn't notice I'd gotten dirt on my face." Vina kept wiping her mouth, scolding herself. What was I even thinking? I must have looked completely ridiculous just now. Theodore looked at her with a surprised expression, then hesitantly spoke up. "Your face is getting dirtier by the moment." Only then did Vina notice her own hands were covered in dark smudges, and she realized with certainty that her face must look absolutely comical. Sitting beside her, Theodore was shaking with suppressed laughter, and she pouted at him for laughing at her. Realizing he shouldn't be acting like this, Theodore wanted to hand her a handkerchief to wipe her face. Vina, flustered, thought that if it belonged to Theodore, it must be terribly expensive. So she blurted out loudly, "I can just wash my face, so there's no need for that." Theodore froze, startled, and asked, "Did you just say you're going to wash your face?" So embarrassed she wanted to run away. "Ugh!" She quickly sprang up and shouted, "I meant I'll just rinse my face with water instead of using your handkerchief, so I really need to go right now." With that, Vina immediately dashed off. If she stayed any longer, she felt she might die of embarrassment. Theodore sat in silence, staring at the door that had just closed. Before he could even gather his thoughts, Vina suddenly cracked the door open and peeked back inside. She explained sheepishly, "I forgot I still hadn't finished lighting the stove." As Vina went back to tending the fire, she noticed he was still smiling. Well, at least someone was feeling happy. Theodore smiled, looking down at his own hand. The sight of her pink hair made him think of a soft sweetness. In truth, her lips had already tasted quite sweet, each hurried swallow, each ragged breath. Even the beads of sweat trickling down her had tasted sweet as well. Was it because she was a witch? And yet she was so clumsy, so inexperienced. She probably didn't even realize it herself when she was lying. What would happen if he touched her lips again? Would she let him go further if he wanted to? He recalled her flustered expression afterward and wondered quietly to himself. Or would she just run away? Theodore paused, gazing thoughtfully at his own hand. If I never fell ill, how far would she let me go? Or, on the other hand, if I lost my mind completely, how far could I go myself? And what about you wanting to leave this place to be with the one you love? Suddenly, her voice called out, snapping Theodore out of his dark train of thought. She tilted her head, asking, "May I go now?" "I finished my task. If you need anything, just call for me." He hesitated, then agreed, and Vina immediately headed outside. Finally done. I only did what Claire asked of me. How did it end up turning into all this? She thought of Theodore's face and mused to herself. For a moment there, she'd thought her heart was about to explode. Even though she wasn't the female lead, her heart had still pounded so hard. She suddenly froze, then quickly hurried off, flustered. This wasn't the time for such thoughts. Sujin would throw a fit if she didn't bring back some food soon. Inside the room, Theodore remained lost in his tangled thoughts. No matter what, she wouldn't be leaving this place. This wasn't somewhere some random stranger out there could ever lay eyes on her. She would always be here, right by his side. So there was nothing to worry about. Theodore watched the flames flickering in the stove and murmured to himself, "If I take action myself, she'll always stay within my sight." Vina would gradually forget the ordinary life she once knew, came the faint reminder. Theodore was a male lead haunted by terrible obsessions. Meanwhile, the pink-haired witch the male lead was so infatuated with was currently swooning over another man in the garden. The dashing sight of Ishut shooting his bow left her utterly captivated. Noticing this, Ishut said with self-satisfaction, "I know I'm impressive, but you sneaking glances at me like that isn't quite proper, you know." That remark left her speechless. What kind of person could be this full of himself? This was the first time she'd seen an archer, so she was just a little curious, that's all. In the novel, Ishut was described as a talented knight, though there weren't many scenes of him actually using a bow or sword. His role was simply to help the female lead, only to be killed off afterward. Ishut smiled arrogantly and said, "So you stopped because you were drawn in by my archery skills, is that it?" Veena could only stay silent. She wasn't the least bit surprised he turned out to be such a narcissist. He then launched into a long-winded rant about his own skills, leaving Veena thoroughly bored. While Ishut was still going on about himself, she glanced at the quiver of arrows standing behind him. Veena walked off, paying no attention to his nonsensical rambling. She picked up the bow and an arrow from the quiver, then slowly raised her arm and drew the bowstring. Ishut kept rambling on, saying how much strength it took to even lift that bow, unless you'd trained both body and mind. He looked at her perfectly correct stance and was stunned. Suddenly, a sharp crack rang out. The bow had snapped in two, startling Veena. Ishut just stood there frozen, wondering to himself what on earth was happening. Veena stood there, holding the broken pieces of the bow in both hands, her face pale, explaining in a trembling voice. "I didn't mean to. I only used a little strength. I didn't think it would break so easily." Ishut was a little stunned. Even if it was just a practice bow, how could such a small body contain such terrifying strength? He hesitated for a moment, then decided to hand her another bow outright. "Try shooting it." Veena immediately shook her head, refusing adamantly, afraid she might break this one too. "It's fine if it breaks, just shoot." Veena happily accepted. "Well, if you insist, then let's do it." She gripped the bow and arrow tightly, took a deep breath, and braced herself. Raising the bow and drawing the string taut, Veena closed one eye and kept the other open, aiming carefully, her target set on the center. As she released the arrow, she watched intently without blinking, her face flushed pink with anticipation. The arrow shot forward swiftly like the wind, flying straight ahead. But contrary to her hopes, the arrow veered wildly off course. Veena rubbed her head, embarrassed. "You were right, it's really not as easy as it looks." But Ishut clenched his fist with sudden determination. "Become my student." Without a moment's hesitation, he then dragged her straight to Theodore to make his request. "Let me have this made, Theodore." Theodore frowned in confusion, but Ishut paid it no mind. He kept praising her enthusiastically. "This girl is no ordinary person, you know. Her talent with a bow is unbelievable. She should really be an archer instead of a maid." After a moment of silence, Theodore began listing her merits one by one, leaving Veena a little proud of herself. In the end, Veena would still be serving Theodore his tea. Ishut disagreed, saying she couldn't serve him and learn archery at the same time. "She's precious to me," he said, and those words left both of them stunned. Seeing his focused expression, she waited nervously for what came next. But his unexpected words made her deflate, since he only meant the precious medicine. She cried inwardly. Really now, did he have any idea what she'd been imagining? Then Veena pressed her lips together and calmed herself. Right now, the medicine was surely the most important thing to Theodore, so why did she feel so thrilled? In the end, Theodore waved Ishut off, giving her no chance to argue back. He was reluctant to leave the decision up to Veena. "Do you want to spend your whole life in that maid's dress? Or do you want to use your talent to become a stylish, formidable archer who can protect others?" Veena hesitated, unsure what to choose. She didn't even know what talent Ishut had seen in her. But she wanted to learn archery to protect the person precious to her. And she wanted to feel that sensation again. The sound of wind tearing apart at her hand, flying far into the distance. She wanted to experience more of that, and other feelings besides. Suddenly, Veena raised two fingers and declared firmly, "I'll choose both." They both stared at her in astonishment. Yes, this was her decision. She would train in archery in the mornings and serve Theodore's tea in the afternoons. Hearing this, Theodore warned her, "But that would exhaust you doing both." But she cut him off. "Lord Theodore, my father always told me I was useless. Of course, I know I'm more capable than he ever gave me credit for. But it's true I've relied a lot on my sister. So if I really do have talent, I want to try both." On her 20th birthday, the day she awakened, she had sincerely given thanks to the gods. "Thank you for giving me another chance to save my sister Estella, and a chance to change things." She wanted so badly to prove that she had strength of her own, too. Seeing this, Ishut didn't know what else to say, and Theodore sank into old memories. His cold father had once spat out cruel words. "You should have died in the same place as Eamon." This shared feeling made Theodore give in to her. The moment he decided, Ishit hugged Veena joyfully. "I promise I'll turn her into a wonderful archer." That embrace irritated Theodore, and he warned them, "You two are standing too close." At that, Veena clasped her hands firmly. "Lord Theodore, don't worry. I won't neglect my duties just because I'm starting archery lessons. If there's any sign of the affliction acting up, I'll come running immediately, no matter where I am." Using her worry that she might not make it in time as an excuse, Theodore took the opportunity to move her room closer to his. This made the two of them stare in wide-eyed shock. Not long after, she and Sujin cheerfully moved into the new room. Theodore's residence had 2 floors. The first floor was used as quarters for the staff, and the second floor belonged to Theodore and Ishit. The idea was that staying there would let her respond quickly to Theodore's requests. On the second floor, the finest room was Theodore's own. He offered her the room right next to his as her private quarters. That room was so beautiful that everything in it was lavish and splendid. Veena clutched her luggage, staring around in awe. It was far beyond anything she had imagined. The two of them happily jumped onto the bed, playing around. Veena lay down on the soft, comfortable bed, feeling utterly satisfied. Perhaps that was only natural, since this was the room meant for the future lady of the house. Odie's expression when he heard the news was still vivid in Veena's memory. She herself had been shocked the first time she'd heard about it, too. Was it really all right for her to use such an important room? Not long ago, she had just been a minor character who appeared briefly at the start of the novel, the sister of the female lead. According to the novel, she was never even supposed to meet Theodore, and now she was only a single door away from him. Strange, Veena began to feel her heart flutter, her heart pounding wildly. Meanwhile, on the other side of that door, Theodore sat reading, quite pleased with himself. When Ishit had carried Veena into the room, forcefully demanding that the girl be handed over to him. The moment he saw that scene, he realized he was furious and resolved that he would make sure no one else would ever hold that hand again. He had once read a fairy tale as a child, though he could no longer remember its title. There was a dragon that, despite knowing it was a hoarder by nature, still kidnapped a beautiful princess. Perhaps he understood how it felt. Even knowing it might hurt the princess, it still took her and locked her away in a tall tower. Perhaps it was only his imagination, but even if he himself were under some kind of spell, it no longer mattered. For the first time, someone understood him in her own way and told him, in a warm voice, that everything would be all right. She was the first person to ever give him a sense of relief. Even monsters have things they want to possess after all. And so Veena's happy days officially began. With a better room, archery lessons from Ishit, and Theodore's affliction finally calming down. She always thought these peaceful days would go on forever, but then the Count's spiteful daughter showed up, right when she was carrying in the tea. Veena could only cry inwardly. Should she lie and say she was sick? No, she couldn't betray Theodore's trust. She had promised she would diligently train in archery and serve his tea at the same time. Surely that woman wouldn't dare do anything to her in front of Theodore. No sooner had she thought that than trouble arrived. The blonde woman wrinkled her nose with distaste. "Don't you smell something, like sweat?" "Goodness, surely you wouldn't dare serve our tea without bathing first." Flustered, Veena explained. "That's not it at all, I already bathed." "So you're saying I'm lying?" Veena froze, her face flushing red. This was too much, being insulted like this, especially in front of Theodore. Suddenly, Theodore ordered the window to be opened. Veena stood stunned for a moment before doing as told. But Theodore's words had hurt her. She really had come straight from training with Ishut, but she was certain she had bathed before coming here. She walked toward the window, silently telling herself not to cry. She shouldn't cry over something like this. When she opened it, the cool, pleasant breeze lifted her spirits a little. It was only then that Veena realized it wasn't that she smelled strange, but that he was trying to help her get away from the Count's daughter. At that, the woman put on an innocent, curious act. "What's your ideal type, Lord Theodore?" "Well," Theodore answered coldly, "I don't have a fixed type, but there's certainly a kind of person I dislike." "Oh? And what kind of person would that be?" He shot back bluntly. "Rude people who barge into someone else's home uninvited, who deliberately touch other people's belongings without permission." Theodore's face darkened. "And violent people, too. That sort of person is simply a waste of my time." Veena stared at him in astonishment, turning to look at Theodore. Did he know about that incident? How? Unlike Vina, the blonde woman sat frozen stiff. Her face still wore its usual smile, but inside, her thoughts were racing. If he knows about that, I need to clear up the misunderstanding right now. But if Theodore didn't actually know, bringing it up now would be as good as admitting she was the violent one. Just as she was about to pretend ignorance, Theodore cut in without a hint of hesitation. By the way, I despise liars most of all. Theodore opened his eyes, and in them was nothing but cold restraint. This is nothing but a cheap act, so I do hope you're not one of those people. That gaze was more than she could bear. She shot up from her seat so abruptly that she knocked over the teacup on the table. She bit her lip. You knew everything and said all that on purpose. Why? What makes that maid so important to you? I'm Theodore's fiancé, and yet he treats me like this in front of some servant girl. That glare of hers startled Vina, but that was all it did. Theodore, of course, also noticed the murderous look aimed at Vina. He waved his hand dismissively. If you have something to say it to me, sweetheart. Naturally, she couldn't voice the resentment building inside her, so she left at once. Before leaving, she couldn't help but glance back and glare at Vina one more time. In the end, only the two of them remained in the room. Vina watched the blonde woman's retreating figure and quietly stuck out her tongue. That small gesture of hers didn't escape Theodore's notice. He suddenly turned his head, catching Vina off guard before she could compose herself. Flustered, she pulled her tongue back in and bowed in thanks. Theodore rested his chin on his hand and waved it off. It's not really like that. I only said what I actually think. As for relationships, well... But those few words made Vina break into a cold sweat. If she hadn't lied and slipped out of the carriage that day, none of this would have happened. And yet, in the end, he had said all those things to the Countess's daughter because of her. And now he was acting like nothing happened. Theodore could be pretty endearing, too. Meanwhile, the one watching her smile couldn't help but think the same thing. How endearing. Meanwhile, Pablo had gone to the Caro Duchess's residence, covering her face and wailing dramatically. Duchess Gioma looked at her fondly and asked gently, There, now tell me what happened. Hearing this, Pablo's eyes lit up as if she'd struck gold. Then she launched into an indignant, endless complaint about what had just happened. Watching Pablo's mouth run without pause, a flicker of distaste crossed the Duchess's eyes. What a nuisance. After the previous Duchess of Caro had passed away, Gioma, a beautiful young lady from a count's family, had immediately been put in her place. Even though she was only a second wife, the position of Duchess of Caro, second only to the Queen herself, was enough to make her overlook that fact. The moment Gioma had been pregnant, she had sworn to herself she would give birth to a son who would become the heir of Caro, not Emin, the previous Duchess's child. She was certain her life would be perfect from then on. But only after giving birth to the child she had longed for did she learn of and uncover House Caro's secret. Her dream had shattered completely. No matter who that child married, Gioma didn't care at all. But choosing the Pablo family, a count's family that had lost its former wealth, that was deliberate. Because that family had always imported diamonds from the Western continent, and more importantly, they owned a distillery that produced the very liquor she loved. Moreover, the girl's looks were pure enough to easily win people over out in society. But thinking of how the girl kept troubling her like this, Gioma felt a flicker of distaste and lowered her voice. Lady Pablo, do keep some dignity. Pablo immediately shrank back, weakly apologizing. But right after, unable to accept it, she clenched her fists. But I'm so upset. I'm Lord Theodore's fiancé. Hearing what the girl had just poured out, the Duchess smiled knowingly to herself. So it wasn't yet time to discard this child after all. Gioma soothed her gently. In the future, you'll become the noble lady of the Caro Duchy. Should you really let yourself be shaken over some mere maid? If someone picks up a stone off the roadside, who would ever care what happens to that stone? Hearing this, Pablo's face broke into an awkward smile. I think so too. It's best to just toss that stone away. This child was just like she herself had been in her younger days. When it came to securing her own future, the girl wouldn't hesitate to act. A young, inexperienced lady, but one brimming with ambition, ready to do anything for the Duchess's own benefit. Beneath the harsh sunlight blanketing the sky, the sound of ragged, exhausted breathing rang out endlessly. Vina's face showed nothing but exhaustion, sweat streaming down. Walking along, trembling all over, She felt like the difficulty of her lessons kept increasing every day. She needed to hurry and bathe and rest before serving the tea. After entering the bathhouse, Vina kept feeling as if someone were watching her, but when she looked around, there was no one there. Maybe she was just so exhausted she was imagining things. The moment she turned back around, an unexpected footstep suddenly appeared. A stranger's voice rang out abruptly. "Hello there." Startled, Vina spun around. He smiled wickedly. "Your hair really is pink, isn't it? You're the maid serving Theodore Zaccaro's tea, right?" Only then did Vina come to her senses and step back. "Who are you? This is the women's communal bathhouse. I'm the one who's about to kidnap you." A wave of fear immediately rose up in her chest. "Let me tell you something." The man stepped closer, one step at a time. "The important thing is, I was paid a full 1,000,000 luna just to take you out of this estate. And after that, I get to do whatever I want with your body." He crudely grabbed a fistful of her hair and spat out vulgar words. "I know who you are, but I don't believe in that superstitious nonsense." With that, he yanked hard on Vina's hair, making her cry out in pain. "If you don't want to lose your hair, you could sell it for a pretty good price, too." Vina's entire body froze stiff. This was dangerous. How could someone like him have infiltrated the Grand Duke's estate? No matter the cost, she had to get out of here. Vina glanced toward the open door. Thankfully, it wasn't locked. If she could get outside, she could call for help. Vina lowered her body, making him let his guard down and creating an opening. Vina used a feminine ploy to shield her body, her voice turning coy. "Stay away from me." The man froze stiff for a moment. What are you doing?" Vina wept inwardly. She guessed her acting must have looked pretty pathetic. Ugh. But the chance had come. Her eyes instantly filled with resolve. With one hand, she swung a hard punch straight into his groin. The punch landed with brutal force, pain shooting straight to his skull. His eyes went completely white. During her brief training so far, she had come to realize a few things. Strength alone was certainly an advantage, but strength by itself wasn't enough to be perfect. She might be stronger than this man, but she didn't know how to actually fight. So the first thing to do was run. Meanwhile, the kidnapper lay writhing pitifully on the floor before passing out from the pain. She ran down the hallway, tension gripping her to the extreme. She screamed desperately, "Is anyone here? No! Why is there no one around here at all?" Then her eyes went wide, remembering what Claire had told her. "Today, the main building is having a full cleaning, so everyone will be over there. So you should just eat lunch outside today." Vina felt as if the sky had come crashing down. Good grief, why did it have to happen at a time like this? What should she do? If she ran to the main building to call for help, she wouldn't make it in time. But if she stayed here, that pervert might... Just then, the kidnapper had come to and caught up with her. Vina racked her brain desperately. All the servants in this estate must have already gone to the main building, so the only person left in this residence would be... She ran with everything she had, screaming with all her strength. "Theodore!" Fortunately, her cry was loud enough for Theodore to hear from inside his room. He set his book down on the table. He opened the door and stepped out to look. Then he froze at the sight of Vina. She had nothing on but a short towel wrapped around her body. Tears streaming, she rushed toward him in a panic. "There's a pervert chasing me!" Theodore's face reddened involuntarily. He froze in place for several seconds. At the same time, Ishit had also heard Vina's cry and rushed out of the bathhouse with only a towel wrapped around himself. Theodore immediately ordered him to close his eyes. Ishit had no idea what was going on, but obeyed at once, squeezing his eyes shut. Vina also closed her eyes on reflex, then startled, wondering why she had closed hers too. Theodore quickly used his own body to shield her from view. Then Theodore turned and ordered Ishit to go check downstairs for any suspicious person in the estate. Wait, was it really all right to send Ishit off half-dressed like that? After Ishit hurried off, Vina bowed her head in embarrassment. This situation felt a little awkward, didn't it? Of course, scenes like this were thrilling and fun to read about in novels. But why was Theodore acting like this all of a sudden? Her eyes drifted downward without meaning to. Only now did she realize she was wearing nothing but a towel. Inside, Vina screamed in mortified panic. This was madness. How could she have run around the house dressed like this? Vina was so embarrassed she didn't know where to look. Did Theodore see too? She'd been so panicked. Surely he couldn't have seen clearly. But when she saw that Theodore's face was also flushed red, she realized with horror that he must have seen everything clearly after all. After a few seconds to steady herself, Vina cried out in embarrassment. Lord Theodore, you can let me go now. Before she could even finish speaking, Theodore suddenly scooped her up into his arms, giving her no chance to resist. Vina, blushing, wanted to be put down. Theodore's voice came out slightly hoarse. Stay still. I'm already trying hard to hold myself back. Chapter 19 for readers. Something sparked in Vina's chest. Hold back what, exactly? Theodore said nothing. He simply carried her into her room and laid her down on the bed. Then he turned away. Even though at that moment Vina was too embarrassed to say a word. She shouldn't have said that. Vina curled up in the warm towel Theodore had draped over her. Theodore, blushing, turned his face slightly away. Just stay here until Ishut comes back to report. She couldn't help but blurt out, If it's Ishut, wouldn't he catch that guy in an instant? Theodore frowned and replied, It's possible another faction sent him. Vina laughed loudly. No way. Surely they wouldn't send someone like that just to kidnap a maid like me. Theodore's expression darkened. Kidnap? Seeing his frightening look, Vina froze. It seemed she'd let something slip. Theodore bowed his head. So that man wasn't simply a pervert after all? Vina forced a smile and pointed at herself. I got away safely. And I wasn't hurt either. So really it's fine. Look, I'm completely unharmed. I'm even stronger than some grown men out there. So how could I possibly be kidnapped that easily? I'm a promising archer that even Ishut admires. And where is this? This is the Grand Duke's estate, so I'm not scared at all. She was speaking with great enthusiasm when Theodore suddenly reached out and gently touched her cheek. Earlier, you told me it was all right, too. You said it so sincerely. You hoped that I would be all right. So now I'll comfort you the same way. It's all right. As he spoke, he gently stroked Vina's hair. For some reason, hearing those words made her feel suddenly flustered and lean forward. Strange, she'd been fine just a few minutes ago. Theodore smiled. Don't worry. As if hypnotized, Vina tilted her face slightly, nuzzling into his palm. She raised a hand to touch that gentle warmth. Unable to help herself, Vina murmured shyly, Theodore, I... In that moment, Theodore's face drew ever closer. His figure filled her entire view. Nothing's wrong, Vina. The distance between their two pairs of lips had shrunk to just a blink away. The door burst open. Odie rushed in a panic. Theodore, are you all right? His voice was full of worry, completely unaware that he had just shattered a tender atmosphere. Theodore sighed in exasperation. Then he stood up to ask about the situation. Upon learning that Ishut had already caught the man, Theodore instructed him to bring hot tea and a set of clothes from Vina's room over here. Meanwhile, Vina's heart was pounding wildly. Her face burned red. Had she almost just kissed him? Had she completely lost her mind? His face had suddenly drawn close. Could it be that I like her? Vina jolted awake with a startled cry, waking Sujin beside her too. Vina couldn't stop her thoughts from spinning. Could it be that Theodore really did like her? He'd said his body reacted to her, and he'd nearly kissed her too. Thinking back, she recalled hearing women in her village say that all men were wolves at heart, and once they had the power to act on it, they'd turn their aggression toward women. So if he really did like her, he wouldn't have been able to restrain himself like that. Male leads obsessed in adult novels never held themselves back. And besides, was she even Theodore's type at all? After comforting herself like this, she managed to calm back down. But then Vina froze. She lowered her head again, clutching her chest. Something suddenly gave a sharp ache in her heart, leaving Vina strangely unsettled. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. It turned out Ishut had come to tell her there would be no training this morning. After what happened yesterday, he had decided to let her rest a little. It seemed the more he rubbed, the more he liked it. Ishut ruffled Vina's hair even harder, tangling it into a mess. Vina gritted her teeth in irritation. But just then, an angry shout rang out. Ishut! The roar was so loud it shook the whole hallway. Ishut flinched and yanked his hand back at once. She turned to look, feigning innocence. Theodore approached with a dark expression. With every step, an aura radiated off him that seemed to chill the air. Ishut sighed, looking put upon. Today I'll be accompanying Lord Theodore somewhere. Before leaving, he shot her a mischievous wink. Just rest up today. Ishut had no idea that behind him, Theodore was quietly seething with jealousy. Vina bowed slightly in farewell, but a flicker of unease crossed her mind. Theodore didn't seem quite all right. Something suddenly fell from the top of Vina's head. She bent down, puzzled, wondering why there was candy on her head. A whole string of other candies immediately tumbled out of her hair. Vina gasped, trembling. There was candy on her head. Only when she recalled Ishit ruffling her hair earlier did it finally click. No wonder he kept rubbing her head like that. Were they showing they cared about her, each in their own way? Vina gently smoothed her hair and burst into a happy laugh. Just then, Sujin leapt out of nowhere and pressed its face close to Vina's, grinning slyly. You like that, huh? All that rolling around you just did earlier, that was because of them too, wasn't it? Blushing, she kept swatting at Sujin repeatedly. Keep that mouth of yours quiet. Meanwhile, in a dim corner of a small room, Theodore had just been slapped by the blonde-haired man. A red mark had appeared on his rugged cheek. His eyes darkened. His gaze swept over, carrying heavy killing intent. While Vina was busy fussing over Sujin, why on earth had Theodore just been slapped? The story goes back a few minutes earlier. The pervert had been captured. He desperately shouted that he had simply gotten lost. He tried to explain that he had only started working at the Duke's estate a few days ago and had accidentally wandered into the main building. So surely Vina must have falsely accused him. But Theodore wasn't so easily fooled. This man was clearly lying. Should I gouge out one of this lowlife's eyes? However, once he calmed down, he realized his main goal this time was to find whoever was behind this, since the man couldn't have acted entirely on his own. So he began questioning him. If he'd been lost, then how did he know about the pink-haired maid? The man confessed that he knew about the pink-haired maid because he'd heard rumors of a pink-haired witch who had come to the manor, something everyone living nearby already knew about. Theodore immediately seized on the opening. So whoever put you up to this also lives around here, correct? Without thinking, the man blurted out agreement. The moment he said it, he realized his mistake. But it was already too late. So, according to what you just said, you somehow managed to get into the tightly guarded Cairo estate. By coincidence, on the very day everyone was over at the main building doing a full cleaning. Then by coincidence, you wandered into this separate residence, and by coincidence, you happened upon her in the women's bathhouse. The blonde man, thinking he'd successfully fooled him, nodded in agreement, sealing his own trap. But in the very next moment, Theodore's face darkened, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Do you think I'm a fool? I don't want to waste any more time. Who hired you? Even now, the man deeply regretted it, wishing he'd never taken this job in the first place. A few days earlier, he had received an offer too tempting to refuse. A bag stuffed full of gold, a chance to change his life completely, and the freedom to do whatever he wanted afterward. All he had to do was kidnap one weak little maid. The offer was simply too tempting, and even knowing that sneaking into a duke's estate was extremely dangerous, he had decided to gamble on it. But now his plan had failed miserably. Still, since there was no solid proof against him, he'd convinced himself he just had to endure until he was handed over to the guards, and he'd be safe. But he was wrong. Theodore, running out of patience, gave Ishit a signal. Understanding at once, Ishit undid the man's restraints, then grabbed his hand and slapped it across Theodore's face. Realizing what he had just done, the man's face instantly drained of color and terror. Ishit pretended to be shocked. Oh my, you dare strike Lord Theodore in the face? Surely you know the consequences of doing that, don't you? So terrifying indeed. The kidnapper could only tremble, unable to say a single word. Theodore then turned to ask Ishit. Ishit, someone who threatens the body of a noble can be tried immediately, correct? He followed along at once. That's correct. What's more, if it happens within the Duke's own estate, the court won't even bother questioning it. The captured man's face went pale with terror. The two of them coldly laid out two choices. Either he'd be handed over to the guards for conspiracy to kidnap, or he'd die right here for assaulting a noble's body. Faced with a threat to his very life, his last shred of resolve finally crumbled, and he decided to confess the whole truth. The next day, in a sunlit forest, Vina was surprised to learn that Theodore was still going out that day. After pressing for details, she saw Ishit wearing the look of someone expecting quite a show. Vina grew even more worried and scolded Ishit for not going along with him. But it seemed Theodore wasn't the one in any danger this time. The scene shifted to a grand estate, where Theodore had come to visit the Count's family. Camilla, at first, assumed he'd come to see her, regretting that she hadn't dressed up more beautifully in time, but she quickly noticed Theodore's gaze was fixed on her father instead. so he'd come to see her father. Theodore paid no attention to her words and spoke up. The reason I've come today is that there's an important matter I need to discuss with both of you. After sitting down, Camilla began fantasizing again that Theodore had come to see her, and that summoning her father meant there must be happy news. This felt just like a formal meeting of families. She was already imagining discussing the two of their futures together, when Theodore cut her off. It seems you didn't understand what I told you last time. I overestimated you. You're nothing but a hollow, empty person who only cares about appearances. That was my mistake. Camilla's smile froze instantly. Theodore wasn't done. He turned to the Count, his words cutting like knives. Count, how exactly did you raise your daughter, that she'd go wandering off to commit such reckless acts? Have you even considered the consequences to your family's destruction? Well? The Count rose angrily to argue back. Theodore, don't you think you're going too far with your words? But Theodore had already prepared his evidence. He pointed to the scratch on his face. This was left by a rat that snuck into the Duke's estate last night. His eyes bore straight into Camilla like needles. Camilla denied it in a panic. A rat, I don't know anything about that. Lord Theodore must be misunderstanding something. Misunderstanding? Theodore laughed coldly. Then what exactly do you think I'm misunderstanding? That you have such poor taste that you associate with filthy rats? Or are you foolish enough not to realize just who you're challenging? Each question struck her heart like an arrow. If not, then perhaps you've always been ambitious enough to want the position of Duchess, but far too foolish to achieve it? Or is that lady nothing more than a greedy, petty person? These words made Camilla shriek in fury, insisting his words were far too much. But Theodore coldly ordered her to sit down. She immediately shut her mouth in fear and obeyed. The intruder clearly knew the manor's schedule in detail. He'd even managed to get himself hired within the estate, so he surely had someone backing him. Someone who understood the workings of the manor well, and who had the authority to freely appoint staff. Theodore immediately thought of his own mother, Lady Jeoma. In the end, the verdict was announced. Get out of my sight. Whether to a convent or to some distant land, it makes no difference. You have 2 weeks. Isn't 2 weeks far too short? Please? The Countess pleaded desperately. If you'd rather see this manor burn to ashes within those 2 weeks, then by all means ignore what I've said. As Theodore turned to walk away, Camilla, in a fit of madness and despair, screamed out, Are you doing all this just for that lowly maid? Theodore stopped in his tracks at once. He very much wanted to tear her mouth apart right then and there. But thinking that Vina might smell blood on him afterward, he held back. It had barely been a week since the kidnapping attempt. He didn't want to frighten her any further. And so no matter how much Camilla screamed, Theodore simply walked away without sparing her another glance. After returning to the estate, the wound on his face immediately caught Vina's attention. Worried, she asked, Lord Theodore, what happened to your face? Who would dare harm the male lead of such a tragic story like this? He answered evasively, It's nothing. But Vina wasn't so easily convinced. That looks like it really hurts. He touched the scratch himself to prove it wasn't that painful. But then an idea crossed his mind, and he suddenly changed his tune. No, actually it does hurt. Then let me go get you some ointment. When she saw the adorable little tin of ointment in Theodore's room, her heart leapt with joy inside. Had her healing methods actually worked? Had she gotten Theodore to accept cute little things? When Theodore called out to her, she snapped back to her senses. But then another problem arose. She couldn't find anything to apply the ointment with, so Theodore told her to just use her fingers, surprising Vina. Didn't the steward use a cotton swab last time? Vina reluctantly agreed. All right then, let me apply it. Looking at his face so close, framed by his hair, the mischievous voice in her heart couldn't help but stir. Looking like this, it seemed just like he was waiting to be kissed. Before she could dwell on the thought any further, Theodore cut her off, wincing in pain. Startled, Vina hurriedly apologized, silently scolding herself inside. What was she thinking in front of someone who was actually injured like this? She, of all people, understood better than anyone how much it hurt to be struck. It wasn't just the physical pain. It was also the humiliation of being hit by someone, and the most helpless part was being unable to do anything about it in that moment. Was there anything she could do to help? And then she gently blew a soft breath onto the wound, just as her sister used to do to comfort her whenever their father hit her. That touch made Theodore blush with embarrassment. But strangely, the one who'd caused this couldn't understand why she'd do the same thing for him too. Worried, Vina asked, "Is something wrong? I thought that would help a bit." Hearing that, she finally sighed with relief. Good thing that method worked. But looking at him, she couldn't quite understand why Theodore's ears had turned a bit red. The morning light stretched across the training grounds, but the air here was tenser than ever. Vina and Ishut stood under Theodore's bullet-sharp gaze. That morning, he had shown up unannounced during her training session, saying he would watch her from over there. This made Ishut suspect she was secretly some princess disguised as a commoner. Otherwise, why would Theodore act this way? Vina sighed. Just what had her image within the household turned into? Good grief. They were even saying she was some kind of martial arts master, having beaten that pervert until he could barely crawl away. And now what? They were even rumoring she was some princess. These dark thoughts about a supposed princess identity kept surfacing in Vina's mind, making her even more embarrassed. Seeing her face flush red, Theodore asked worriedly what was wrong. Vina quickly changed the subject, asking why he'd suddenly decided to come here today. When she learned that Theodore had come to genuinely assess her true potential, she couldn't help but feel anxious. But remembering that Ishut had said she was improving fast, Vina felt her confidence surge. Today, she'd make sure to surprise Theodore. And she really did surprise him, just not a single arrow landed anywhere near the bullseye. Vina wept in humiliation. At this point, Ishut's pride wouldn't allow her to fail. At the very least, she needed to hit the bullseye once. He quickly moved to correct her stance, but that close contact set off Theodore's jealousy. He strode over quickly, growling. "Just tell her verbally, that's enough. Why do you have to get so hands-on about it?" He put heavy emphasis on the words hands-on. Then he turned to praise Vina for doing very well, which filled her with pure joy. "That's enough for today. You should go buy some new clothes." He criticized her short, worn-out outfit, which left Vina feeling rather annoyed. This was the most comfortable outfit she owned. Seeing that Theodore intended to take her shopping for new clothes, she quickly refused, worrying over her meager pay. But Theodore had already made up his mind. "Don't worry. I won't touch a cent of your precious savings." Those words sparked a wild thought in her head. Could this be one of those scenes where the poor female lead gets showered with gifts, like in the novels? There was one line she'd always wanted to say in a moment like this. "Excuse me, from here to there, I'll take everything." That line made the other two people in the shop freeze in place. After saying it, Vina flustered and explained herself. "Oh no, that's just a line I've always wanted to say at least once before I die." She recalled how Theodore had brought her here, promising to buy her new clothes. But nothing turned out the way she'd imagined. Every single item she picked out, a vibrant red dress, an elegant outfit, or a patterned style, met with his cold disapproval. His comments? "The color's too flashy. That's impractical to move in. The pattern's too gaudy." His curt remarks, sharp as knife strikes, started to wear down Vina's patience. What exactly did he intend to buy for her then? Then she spotted an outfit in pastel yellow. Simple, cute, and it looked comfortable. "Is this one okay?" Vina asked hopefully. The shopkeeper enthusiastically praised her. "My lady has wonderful taste. This is our newest design, cut to show off the ankle beautifully. It will suit the young lady perfectly." But Theodore coldly rejected it. His reason sounded utterly absurd. Vina snapped in frustration. "Is there something wrong with my ankles? I'm the one wearing it. Shouldn't it be enough that I like it? It's obvious you just don't want to buy it, isn't it?" Ishut, who had just walked in and witnessed the scene, looked on in astonishment. Theodore looked like he was actually enjoying this. Vina turned around angrily. "What else could it be? You're satisfied seeing me tormented like this, aren't you?" Ishut scratched his head, at a loss for words. "Is something wrong with your head? Do you really think Theodore would waste his precious time just to come here and irritate you?" Annoyed as she was, she had to admit he had a point. He went on, just like that time he caught her red-handed, and this morning too. She was seeing sides of Theodore she'd never known before. "Doesn't that mean you hold a special place in my young master's heart?" "Special?" Vina echoed, stunned, her face flushing red. That's impossible. But she remembered how, when they'd arrived, he had held out his hand for her to take. Vina, still dazed, wondered, who else could it have been for if not me? Vina anxiously refused. "I couldn't possibly. A commoner like me can't do that. It would look strange for a noble to help someone down from a carriage. I'd rather just be a step stool for Lord Theodore. Theodore looked puzzled. Why would you be a step stool? I've heard that some nobles make their servants kneel down so their shoes don't get muddy. That remark left Ishut unable to stop laughing. Theodore was at a loss for words. First of all, yes, my shoes are expensive, but I own dozens of pairs just like them. Second, the weather is beautiful today, there's no mud anywhere. And finally, I'm simply not the kind of person who would do something like that. And did you notice the shop staff over there? No, you didn't. Even though I don't seem to pay attention, I'm always aware of what's around me. If you have my escort, no matter what you're wearing, you'll look like a true young lady. That way there won't be another unfortunate incident like last time. That unexpected explanation left Vina stunned. So he really had been thinking about what happened last time. That quiet concern made her heart sink. Then Theodore held out his hand again. Shall we head inside, my lady? She told herself she was used to being ignored, that she could climb in and out of carriages just fine on her own. But this moment felt different. Once inside, Theodore came closer and complained. Even in a store this large, there isn't a single outfit that suits her. Then he held out his hand again. Let's go somewhere else, Vina. That gesture made her feel like she was overstepping. If he kept doing this, how was she supposed to stay indifferent? But instead of taking her to another women's boutique, Theodore led her to a men's clothing store. He said calmly, men's clothing tends to be longer and looser, so it should suit you better. Before Vina could even protest, the two men had already walked straight in, leaving her nothing to do but cry. If only she'd known better than to trust a man's word. This is basically fraud. Elsewhere, Camilla begged the Duchess for help, only to be shoved to the ground. The Duchess's voice was full of contempt. How dare you lay your filthy hands on me? Camilla screamed in despair. Filthy hands? You were the one who took my hand first. I came to you looking for a way to help me, and you pushed me away just because I touched your dress? Camilla shouted, furious. Weren't you the one who told me I could get rid of that maid? And weren't you the one who told me a few days ago that the secluded quarters would be empty because of the general cleaning? This is all your fault, not mine. But the Duchess denied it with a smile. I only answered what you asked me, my lady. I never discussed any plan with you. That calculated denial left Camilla stunned. Then what was it we talked about last time? You even gave me specific details about the kidnapper. But thinking it over carefully, she realized that every single thing the Duchess had said never directly spelled out her plan. If anything went wrong, the Duchess would have nothing to do with it. The Duchess had already run out of patience. She ordered, "The young lady says she'll be leaving right now. Escort her out." Camilla tried to struggle, but it was useless. After Camilla was dragged away, the Duchess sneered inwardly. I thought we were alike, but it seems I was wrong. She can't even handle something this small. In her perfect world, anything unstable or uncontrollable had to be removed. And Theodore was the only stain on her otherwise perfect life. To make her life perfect again, she had to get rid of this stain quickly. A wicked thought flashed through her mind. As expected, she'd still have to use that little witch after all. The danger closing in from the Duchess was completely unknown to Vina. Right now, the girl was caught in a laughable, tearful predicament, trying on oversized men's clothes. What is happening to me? She cried. Even the smallest size looks ridiculous on her. Theodore watched in silence, and that silence only made Vina more flustered. How bad must it look if Theodore just stands there without saying anything? She worried to herself. Finally, Theodore spoke. All right, I think it looks good. Then he pointed seriously. From there to over there, wrap up every outfit in that size for me. Wait, Vina said, stunned. Hold on a second. Just a moment ago you said my dress was too expensive, and now you're doing this? These clothes aren't flashy, but the stitching is fine, and the fabric is high quality. They may not be as pretty as those dresses, but they're not cheap either. Ishut also spoke up in protest, which moved her deeply. But his next line made her want to punch him. Please think of me, the one who has to look at that site every day. Vina still tried to refuse. Besides, I don't actually need this many training clothes. The amount you're buying right now is probably more than all my seasonal clothes combined. But Theodore remained firm. I can have the tailor adjust the sizes, so there's no need to worry about that. As for the dress, that's not happening, Theodore said, turning away, his face reddening. I said it's too beautiful, so no. But Vina misunderstood. Do you mean a dress that lovely would be wasted on someone like me? Are you saying I'm not even worthy of wearing a dress like that? She thought. her heart aching with hurt pride. On the carriage ride back, Vina was still sulking. She knew dresses like that were things a commoner like her could never dream of, but she didn't want to hear words like that from Theodore. Seeing her like this, Theodore sighed. "Give me your hand," he said. Still upset, Vina held it out anyway. He placed a single pastel yellow ribbon in her palm, the exact color she had admired earlier. "Why do you have this?" Theodore explained. "I figured it shouldn't get in the way of your training. Just something like that." He added, "Besides, I thought it would suit you." That thoughtful gesture soothed Vina's wounded heart. Joy returned to her and she blurted out, "I like this ribbon more than that dress anyway." "Thank you, Theodore." She even thought about showing it off to Sujin and Gay. But that brief happy moment was shattered. A strange, familiar scent of incense drifted into her nose. Theodore's expression turned serious as he spoke. "If you like my gift that much, there's something I want to ask you." A gentle breeze slipped through the carriage window, carrying that oddly familiar faint scent of incense. That scent made Vina dizzy, her whole body burning, her mind spinning. It was the very same fragrance she'd sensed in that most dangerous moment, when their skin had touched and their breathing had grown ragged. How could she ever forget it? Her heart began to race wildly. In that suffocating space, Theodore's low, warm voice rang out, "I have a question." Those words, spoken in such a serious atmosphere with that intoxicating scent, left Vina unable to think, her mouth falling open. "Whatever it is, I'll go along with it." Theodore finished his sentence. "Why don't you close your eyes for a bit?" Both of them froze at once, staring at each other in confusion. "Are my ears even working right now?" she thought. Asking something like that, with that serious expression and those tempting lips. And on top of that intoxicating scent, and he tells me I should just close my eyes? "Anything goes?" That remark made Vina jump in shock. He leaned closer, teasing. "For example, I'm a little curious what you're thinking about right now." Vina scolded herself in embarrassment. "Ugh, are you crazy, Vina? Theodore isn't having an episode right now. Why would he want to kiss you? That was just the monster inside you earlier talking. This is the real you now." So embarrassing, she wanted to disappear into the ground. After that, Theodore moved to sit right next to her, refusing to go back to his old seat. That closeness left her flustered. Theodore was acting so strange today, suddenly taking her shopping, refusing everything for the oddest reasons, ending up buying men's clothes, and now insisting that someone who wasn't even sleepy take a nap. But she suddenly realized she liked even this version of Theodore. Maybe she was starting to change too. "I like being like this with Theodore," she thought. "I wish this carriage would move a little slower." Back in her room, Vina spent hours trying to tie the yellow ribbon Theodore had given her, smiling at herself in the mirror. "Hey, are you out of your mind?" Sujin snapped, annoyed. "You've been staring at that hair for hours now, smiling at the mirror one moment, then crying the next." Vina pouted. "I wasn't crying. My curly hair just got tangled in the ribbon and it hurt, that's all." "Never mind, you wouldn't understand anyway. You don't even have a single strand of hair." Sujin flew into a rage and pounced on her, hitting her over and over. Suddenly, Vina found herself missing her sister terribly. Her sister used to wash and comb her unruly hair, then braid or tie it up so neatly. Just thinking about it made her miss her even more. "It's been nearly 2 months since I left her," she thought. "I wonder if Imun has been taking good care of her. Have the two of them settled down somewhere?" Suddenly, a thought struck her. If her sister and Imun had settled down, his family would know where they were. Hope welled up inside her, and Vina decided to write a letter to her beloved sister after all this time apart. However, that letter unintentionally sparked a misunderstanding. Odie, who had been asked to deliver the letter, reported back to Theodore. "Judging by the recipient's address, it looks like the letter is going to the village where she used to live. I'd guess it's for her older sister." But Odie didn't think that was quite right. "I don't think the name Imun sounds like a woman's name, sir," Theodore concluded coldly. "Then it might be for her father." The recipient's surname wasn't Grazia, but Imun Vanset. That unfamiliar name made Theodore frown. Vina wasn't sending the letter to her sister, her only living relative. Aside from that worthless father of hers, Vina, of all people, was writing a letter to some man. He recalled Vina once saying she wanted to leave this estate and live with the person she loved. Vina, jealousy began to creep into Theodore's heart. Vina was the only person who could cure Theodore's affliction. If she was planning to return home out of homesickness, then that thought filled Odie with unease. Though he had no habit of prying into other people's letters, he needed to be prepared for any possible outcome. Theodore, however, refused. In the flickering candlelight, Theodore's eyes were filled with possessiveness. Nothing will happen. There's no way she can escape from here because I intend to keep her by my side. Theodore's possessive words kept echoing in Odie's mind, leaving him uneasy. Keep her by his side? What exactly was he planning to do? Vina tied the yellow ribbon Theodore had given her into her hair, showing it off without a care. When I move, it sways so gently it looks even cuter. Theodore praised her too. It looks like a small pink flower fluttering in the wind, very lovely. Vina found that odd since the ribbon was yellow, not pink. It's you, he said. Those words made Vina freeze, and the air around them instantly turned strange. After it finally registered, Vina blushed furiously in embarrassment. What is this? Isn't this a little too soon? Did I hear that wrong just now? He's still staring straight at me right now. Even so, before she could finish the thought, Theodore clutched his chest, looking as if he were in great pain. She rushed over. Theodore, are you all right? How does your heart feel? Is this a sign that he's about to have an episode? She wondered. I thought it was fine since he hadn't shown any symptoms lately. Better start the fluid infusion first. But Theodore suddenly spoke up. My heart is pounding so hard. Her brother had already dropped enough hints, and yet this girl still couldn't grasp a single adult matter. Completely oblivious, she said, well, a heart is supposed to beat. If it stopped, that would be a real problem. Or maybe it's beating especially hard today, in which case this is serious. Old Mr. George also said his heart was pounding too hard, and a few days later he passed away. Out of options, Theodore pressed his forehead against hers and called out her name. Vina, I think I'm going insane. Who would have guessed she'd go and ruin the mood again, saying, it looks like you might have a fever. Your hands are unusually hot and your face is flushed too, and your voice is trembling. Ignoring Theodore's feeble protests, she scooped him up with surprising strength. Just lie down and rest for now. Being carried like a princess left Theodore utterly humiliated. He never expected she'd have that kind of strength. Afterward, Odie came in to check on him. A slight fever, but blood pressure and pulse are both normal. Odie looked at the sight of Theodore wrapped up in blankets and remarked dryly, it doesn't seem like the problem is a cold. Seeing that Theodore looked ready to lose his mind, he quickly tried to smooth things over. So you're saying you tucked Theodore in like this because you were worried about him? Clueless, Vina answered with a bright smile. Of course, when you're sick, resting in bed is the best thing for you. Well, I'll get going then. After Vina left, Theodore sank into thought. I don't know if she's genuinely this naive or just pretending not to understand. But she did this because she was worried about me, he thought. Maybe I should try again sometime. Meanwhile, Vina, who had been walking slowly, suddenly quickened her pace, beginning to realize the truth. It seems like Theodore really does like me. Wait, she thought. Every mature-rated tragedy novel she'd read in her past life had ended in a bad ending. It was practically the default from the start, since tragic stories could never end happily. Is the male lead of a tragedy novel falling for me? A hypothetical question popped into her mind. Suppose you become the obsession target of the male lead in a mature-rated novel. What would you choose, run away or accept it? Vina wrestled with the question deeply. She couldn't run. She'd never once seen anyone successfully escape an obsessive male lead in any of the novels she'd read in her past life. And if she ran, what would happen to her sister Estella if she got caught instead? If the story reverted back to its original course, it would be a disaster. From the start, her sister was supposed to be the ideal heroine, so why had it become her instead? After all that deliberation, Vina sighed and accepted the thorny but perhaps only path left, to face it head-on. Just then, the Duchess's voice rang out, dripping with disdain. Oh my, what are you doing here? Sitting on the ground like that, how filthy. Vina, bewildered, wondered, who is this? She hadn't heard, no one had told her a guest was visiting today. Before she could react, the maid beside the Duchess snapped at her. Stand up already! How dare you act so rudely in front of the Grand Duchess? Vina immediately stood and apologized. She never imagined the woman in front of her was Theodore's mother. Then something unimaginable happened. The Duchess smiled and invited her to sit and talk for a while. A moment later, the two of them sat down together at a tea table. Vina's mind buzzed with excitement. What is happening right now? What kind of situation is this? I'm sitting across from the Duchess having a conversation with her, she thought. She noticed how much the Duchess's beauty resembled Theodore's. Perhaps beauty really does run in the family, she thought. Theodore must have inherited his looks from the Duchess. The Duchess continued, her expression unreadable. I heard you had an unpleasant encounter with some young lady not long ago. Are you all right? Vina quickly confirmed. Yes, I'm fine. That concern made Vina start to form the illusion that the Duchess was actually a kind person. From what Rita had told her, the relationship between Theodore and the Duchess wasn't good, so she'd vaguely assumed the Duchess would be like the stereotypical cruel Duchess from those novels. But she never expected the Duchess to know everything happening in this vast estate, and even to care enough to ask about the well-being of a mere maid like her. Could it be that the Duchess was cold on the outside but warm on the inside? Just like Theodore? Seeing that Vina wasn't picking up on her roundabout hints about leaving, the Duchess grew impatient. It seemed she had no choice left but to speak plainly to this girl. Then blunt, insulting words came pouring out. What do you want? If it's material things you want, I can give you anything you desire. But if I asked you to go back to your hometown, would you leave? Seeing Vina hesitate, the Duchess sneered inwardly. No matter how foolish she is, it seems she still has some greed in her. Tempted by money like that, how vulgar. But in the end, this girl's journey to a place she clearly didn't belong would come at a price. I only have this one child, she thought. I can easily erase a stain like this and reclaim my once perfect life. Completely unaware of the Duchess's true intentions, Vina naively believed the Duchess was simply worried about Theodore. She declared earnestly, I will absolutely cure Lord Theodore. I already made him a promise. I promise to stay by his side until he fully recovers. She was even touched, thinking, I never imagined she'd offer extra compensation for my hardships. She's truly a good person, Vina thought. The conversation ended in deep mutual misunderstanding. Vina cheerfully said her goodbyes. I'll be careful on my way back, my lady. And she thought to herself, she must feel relieved after hearing what I said. Why do the Duchess and Theodore have such a bad relationship anyway? Though she believed the Duchess was a good person, she had no idea that the woman's expression had darkened the moment she left. Something unpleasant was likely coming next. Afterward, Vina chatted with Claire about the Duchess. She realized that the Duchess and the Grand Duke rarely ever visited the secluded quarters. Vina naively guessed, could it be that she's too shy to visit her son often? Is that why Theodore became so attached to people early on? She accidentally blurted out her thoughts out loud, stunning the servants around her. Had they just heard something they really shouldn't have? Then Vina began comparing the Theodore everyone described, a quiet man of few words. Someone indifferent to material things with the Theodore she knew, the one who'd dragged her out shopping, given her a ribbon, and shown her such intimate gestures. Vina froze. Why is this so completely different from the Theodore I know? Then a thought struck her that meant everything he'd done for her was because he liked her. But I'm not the heroine, she thought. This can't be some destined love. What on earth is going on here? Vina still found it strange. She remembered that in the original novel, quite a few of Theodore's actions were mentioned in connection with the heroine. At the start, just like any typical mature-rated romance novel, those scenes were all about confinement, threats, and other things too dark to describe. But he had never done anything like that to her. From the very beginning, this Theodore had been different from the Theodore she knew from the original story. If Theodore had changed, then who exactly was this current Theodore? Just then, a sound rang out from the connecting door to Theodore's room, startling Vina. The noise grew closer and closer, leaving Vina unable to sit still. Is Theodore chasing a rat or something? She wondered anxiously. When knocking got no response, Vina decided to open the door to check. But the moment the door cracked open, a figure lunged straight toward her, Theodore collapsing on top of her. His body was burning hot, his breathing ragged as he anxiously asked, Are you all right? Vina smiled and said she was fine, but inside her heart was breaking. Because she knew Theodore's affliction had broken out again. Instinct told her she needed to give Theodore fluids right away, but this time he was too strong for her to do anything. At this rate, it would be just like their first encounter. He would attack her again. Fear washed over her. Please calm down, Lord Theodore. But just as Theodore leaned down, something strange happened. She didn't feel any pain at all. Was he holding back his affliction? From deep within his delirium, Theodore's pained voice rang out. Vina, stay away from me, get away. In that moment, Vina finally understood. The noise she'd heard earlier had been the sound of Theodore struggling in agony to restrain himself, even though she'd been right next door, able to help him at any moment. Why was he holding it back like this? She began to question just what Theodore's true nature really was. In the novel, Theodore was a man consumed by madness, forever caught in an uncontrollable rage. A man with a cruel, merciless nature. But the Theodore she knew was sensitive yet steadfast, cold on the outside but warm within, suspicious yet fragile like a lost child. Theodore was the kindest of the kind. He was afraid he might frighten her, worried that he might hurt her, even while fighting against his own urges with his mind so hazy. Claire said Theodore was frightening and hard to approach, while Ishit said he was a life that needed protecting. And finally, a clear answer surfaced in her heart. Theodore was someone who wanted to protect her world. She smiled gently at Theodore. "I'm all right." Hearing that, Theodore felt a surge of anger. "I want to hold that lost child's hand," she thought. "I want to bring healing to the pitiful male lead of this tragic story." She saw the sorrow in those eyes. "I've been such a fool," she thought. "Theodore likes me too. Why was I worrying so much? I like him too. I love Theodore so much." Then, before they could even think about dinner, Theodore drifted off to sleep. Afterward, Veena hurried to Odie's room. Odie was surprised. "Veena, it's this late. What are you doing here?" "I'm sorry to bother you, sir, but I thought I should report this to you as soon as possible." Odie frowned. "Is it urgent enough that you had to come here still in your nightgown?" Just then, Odie noticed a red mark on Veena's neck. He asked worriedly, "Did another pervert break in? Are you all right?" Veena quickly denied it. "Oh no, it's not that. It's Lord Theodore right now," but before she could finish, Ishit cut her off. "Another intruder? Where? Veena, are you okay? Where is he? We already tightened security. Tell us quickly." Veena shouted, exasperated. "There's no intruder. Lord Theodore's affliction has flared up again." Afterward, the two men went to check on him. "But he seems fine now." "Yes, he's calmed down and fallen asleep," Veena explained, frustrated. "I thought I should let you know about Lord Theodore's condition as soon as possible. That's why I came looking for Odie." Odie rubbed his forehead and apologized. Things had been calm lately, so he'd let his guard down. "You did well, Veena," Veena said modestly. "Oh no, this is my job anyway." But a stray thought crossed her mind. If Theodore hadn't fallen asleep, I might have. The memory of that closeness made her cheeks flush red, her mind spinning endlessly. While Veena was busy chasing impure thoughts out of her head, Ishit eyed the mark on her neck, unable to help raising an eyebrow. He'd heard about the treatment method before, but still. He wrapped a scarf around her neck for her. "Are you all right?" "Yes, I'm fine." But Ishit checked again. "Really? Are you truly all right?" "I really am fine." Only then did he relax. "If it ever gets too much for you, just tell me. Understood?" That unexpected concern touched Veena. Ishit had a sweet side to him after all. But his next words made her hold back a laugh. "We'll be skipping morning training for a few days." Odie chimed in too. "You don't need to do any work around the estate for the next few days either." Confused, she protested. "Why? I'm really fine." Because if she agreed to rest for a few days, she wouldn't get to see Theodore at all. But both men shook their heads firmly. "Even if you're fine, it still isn't happening." Seeing that she still didn't understand, Ishut awkwardly pointed at her neck. Only then did Veena realize what was going on. She was mortified beyond words. And that was how she ended up with such an unexpected little vacation. 2 days passed in boredom and longing. She'd heard Theodore had woken up that very same day. But after that, he hadn't even come out for tea, so she hadn't been able to see him either. Watching the lovesick face of someone who'd just discovered love yet wouldn't even go get food for him, Sujin only felt disgusted and stormed off to find food on its own. As those burning emotions gradually settled, Veena began to see things more clearly. Before, Theodore hadn't truly been himself. He'd been overtaken by his affliction. To him in that state, it didn't matter if it was her or not. Any woman with pink hair would have done. And even though today's Theodore treated her so well, it wouldn't be strange if he suddenly turned cold toward her again at any moment. So it wouldn't be strange at all if Theodore never came looking for her. That thought left her feeling bitter. But just then, a knock sounded from the other side of the door, leaving Veena unable to believe her ears. But Theodore's voice confirmed she hadn't misheard. "Veena, I'm going to open the door. Is that all right?" Veena's heart pounded wildly. How does he always know exactly how to make my heart race like this, she wondered. She stood up to go open the door, only to realize she was a complete mess. So she called out for Theodore to wait a moment while she got herself presentable. Then Vina opened the door and greeted him a little awkwardly. Seeing her all dressed up, Theodore found it odd. I heard from Odie that you're on leave. Why are you wearing your uniform? She laughed it off. Ha 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 ha, I just felt like wearing this, that's all. Inside she was crying, but this was the cutest, most presentable outfit she actually owned. She should have bought some of the clothes Theodore had offered after all. But then a delicious aroma caught Vina's attention. Knowing her well, Theodore smiled and invited her into his room. Can I really eat all of this? Her eyes lit up. Theodore explained gently. I wasn't sure what you'd like, so I had them prepare a little of everything. Looking at the mark on Vina's neck, he fell silent for a moment, then leaned in closer. This is from me, isn't it? That closeness sent Vina's heart racing out of control. Embarrassed, she covered it. Oh, that. The bruise has faded a lot since before, so it's fine. It doesn't hurt at all, Theodore confessed. Ever since I woke up from that episode, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. Vina was surprised. Theodore had been thinking about her? I've thought about Theodore a lot too, she thought. I was sad and worried because he hadn't come to see me. But Theodore's next words froze the air completely. Just let me die already. The dark intensity in his eyes made her tremble. So this is my last meal, is it? But in truth, Theodore was only angry at himself. Angry that he couldn't remember what had happened that night. He reached out and touched the red mark on her neck. My lips touched here, didn't they? He reached up and brushed the reddened tip of her ear. And here too. The evidence of what I did was left behind so clearly. And yet I don't remember any of it. I can't remember a single thing. Vina quickly tried to comfort him. You were in so much pain back then, it's only natural. To escape the heavy atmosphere, Vina tried to change the subject. If this keeps up, her heart was going to explode. Don't worry about it anymore. Let's eat some pudding together. They say eating something sweet lifts your mood. I'll even give you a cherry as a special treat. But Theodore refused to let it go. Then how do you explain it, when all I want to do is strangle that bastard? Vina, confused, said, But the person you're talking about is you, Theodore. Do you really think that bastard is the same as me? Different eye color, no shred of humanity, and terrifying strength. You think that thing resembles me. I've hated that madman for a long time now. I never know when he'll show up and tear my life apart, and even though he has no form of his own, he can still take control of this body. But this time he touched you. He even left his mark on you. I want to hunt that thing down to the ends of despair. His voice was full of helplessness mixed with fury. So was what you said earlier just talking to yourself? He couldn't escape his affliction, couldn't ignore that other presence within him. And now he despised himself for it too. Theodore continued, Tell me what I did to you back then, so I can erase every trace that thing left behind. That's so cruel. The person with me that day was you, so I gave myself to you willingly. I'll save you from that pain, so please don't hate yourself like this. But before they could do anything more, a knock at the door interrupted them. Being constantly interrupted by Odie at the worst moments left Theodore utterly furious. Odie was about to announce something important when he noticed Theodore's sour expression and changed his tone. Did something happen? Theodore replied coldly, Is it urgent? Not exactly. Then come back later. But Odie insisted. There's currently a man demanding that we open the door for him. Theodore said indifferently. Why would I need to know about that? Can't the guards handle it themselves? But Odie hesitated before delivering the bad news. He says he's Vina's father. Vina was stunned. Father came looking for me? But how could he possibly know she was staying at the Grand Duke's estate? The memory of her drunken, abusive father made Vina tremble. A thought of running away flashed through her mind. But when she remembered her beautiful older sister, she gradually came back to her senses. Father always said her sister was more useful than her. He would always go looking for her sister first. But if he was looking for her now, that meant he still didn't know where her sister was. No. If she kept hiding from him like this, there would come a time when he'd give up and go look for her sister instead. What would she do if her sister got caught and dragged back by him? Seeing her like this, Theodore gently tried to comfort her. If you want, I can have him removed, or arrange a private room for you to talk to him. Do whatever you wish. But Vina knew she couldn't keep running away for the rest of her life. She had to face her father herself. At that moment, a burning flame of determination rose in her heart for this matter. I'm not helpless anymore, she thought. I left home, became independent, I've grown up, and I've been training with Ishud every day too. There's nothing to be afraid of. But Theodore was still worried, since her father was known throughout the town as a notorious troublemaker. He feared she wouldn't be able to handle it alone. Vina held her ground, answering cheerfully. It'll be fine. Ishud already taught me some basic self-defense moves. But deep down, another reason she wanted to face him alone was that she didn't want Theodore to see someone like that as her family. Vina smiled. This is something my father and I need to settle between ourselves. Her words seemed to enlighten Theodore. Thinking of his own father, perhaps he too needed to settle things with him himself. Still, Theodore had Odie call Ishud over to be ready for any situation. Vina prepared to step into the drawing room with fierce determination. She'd locked her father up and left home like that, so he must be furious by now. When he saw her, he might start yelling and even try to hit her. But she wasn't going to just stand there and take it anymore. But everything unfolded far differently than she'd imagined. Her father wasn't angry at all. Instead, he wore an overjoyed expression. I never imagined you'd be living somewhere this beautiful, he said. His attitude made Vina suspicious. Her father would never welcome her like this. Instinct told her something was wrong. She asked, How did you know I was here, father? The day you disappeared, that foolish boy vanished too. Those words made Vina flinch, so he'd read her letter without permission. But what shocked her even more was her father's attitude. For someone who'd come to drag his runaway daughter back, wasn't this overjoyed act a bit much? This was the same man who had, more than once, dragged her across the ground by her hair. Could it be, just maybe, that by some miracle, after she and her sister disappeared, he'd finally realized the importance of family? A naive glimmer of hope flickered in her throat. But that hope shattered quickly. Her father's true nature soon showed itself. Give me the money. You wrote in your letter that you're making good money, didn't you? Well, of course you would, working in a magnificent estate like this. Vina felt crushed. How could she have thought, even for a moment, that this man, always the same through and through, understood love for family? While she and her sister worked themselves to the bone earning money, he squandered it all on liquor and gambling as if it were his own. She'd truly believed, if only for an instant, that this man had come to understand the value of family. What a fool she'd been. Then his gaze landed on her neck. What's that on your neck? Judgment and contempt immediately spread across his face. Tsh, blood never lies, I suppose. A worthless daughter like you really went and did something filthy like that, huh? He said, raising his hand. Vina panicked and tried to dodge, but her body froze, refusing to move even an inch. Even after growing up and becoming independent, even after training every day and growing stronger, in the end she still couldn't do anything in front of this man. In despair, she tried to comfort herself. At least her sister wasn't here. Her sister who had once tried to protect her, and ended up taking the beating in her place. It'll be fine if I just endure a few hits, she thought. He'll calm down eventually, like always. I can face this on my own. Just as her father's hand was about to come crashing down, a shadow lunged forward. What do you think you're doing? Theodore's ice-cold voice rang out. Vina looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. Theodore's freezing glare made her father tremble and drop his hand. Noticing how expensive Theodore's clothes looked, he immediately changed his tone, feigning concern. Oh, I think there's some kind of misunderstanding here. I was simply worried, as her father, and wanted to check how she was doing. Isn't it only natural for parents to worry when their child works far from home? Hearing this, Vina felt sick to her stomach. He could lie without even blushing. But his next words froze them both. By the way, I'm quite curious how a child like her could possibly be working here. As far as I know, hiring a minor is illegal. Theodore broke into a cold sweat. Did you lie about your age? Why did he suddenly feel like a criminal? He went on. I have no intention of causing trouble for the Duke's family, so if you just treat me fairly on this one matter, I'll turn a blind eye. Now that he no longer cared about her money, he wanted to extort the Duke's family instead. But how could he not even know his own flesh and blood's real age? Vina quickly denied it. Have you had so much to drink your brain's gone soft? I turned 20 over 2 months ago. I'm an adult now. I don't need your permission anymore. Cornered, her father immediately showed his true colors. I'm your father. I don't care how old you are. But the money you earn, you owe it to me. You only got a job in a magnificent estate like this because I raised you. That greed and unreasonableness filled Vina with contempt. Don't talk nonsense. It wasn't you. It was my sister who raised me. Someone who doesn't even know. And I showed them exactly where he was hiding. When he broke my arms and legs, I had that same expression. Once he loses his mind, no one can stop him. No, I don't want to. I'm so scared I have to run. But Theodore's call snapped her back to her senses. Odie already went to fetch Ishut. Go back to your room. But Vina knew that once her father got like this, he no longer cared about anything. Like a madman, he would strike out at everyone around him. She knew she had to steady herself now. Theodore had been raised to be a nobleman, so he would never actually raise a hand against someone. And there was no telling when Odie would bring Ishut back. Theodore had protected her, so now it was her turn to protect Theodore. Vina drew her bow with practiced ease. "Stay away from Theodore," she shouted. He froze in shock. "What is this? Have you lost your mind?" Theodore was no less stunned. He stared wide-eyed at the figure before him. "I know I've always been stronger than you, but I never once struck back because I was afraid of you." "You're still exactly the same as you were back then." "That makes me feel like that powerless child again, running away all over again. But now I earn my own money, and I've found my own talent too. There are people here who believe in me and people I want to protect." Vina declared firmly. "I'm not afraid of you anymore. You always thought you were the one holding the bow, but the only one who can draw this string is me." The arrow flew, tearing through the air and lodging in the wall right beside his head. He recoiled in terror. You little coward, did you just shoot at me?" "How dare you aim a bow at your own father?" Vina warned coldly. "Next time, I'll aim straight for your weak point, so get out of here." Furious and terrified at once, he spat out one last venomous remark. "You filthy little brat, you really are the child of that filthy woman." Just then, a commanding voice rang out. "What is all this chaos?" The one who had arrived was none other than the Duke. His presence swept through the drawing room like a cold gust of wind. He looked down at Vina's father, trembling on the floor with utter contempt. He gave a cold order. "Take this man outside." Her father panicked. "I can't leave, Vina." Her eyes widened. So he was capable of making that expression too. Eyes filled with fear, begging for forgiveness even though he'd done nothing wrong, pleading for help just like the desperation she once felt, crying and begging for her own life. Vina pressed her lips together. "But I won't save you, just as you abandoned me all those years." This is the end of this father-daughter relationship. After the man was dragged away, the Duke turned to Theodore, his tone sharp. "What exactly have you brought into this house? How pathetic." Vina quickly spoke up to defend him. "Please wait!" Lord Theodore didn't do anything wrong, but Theodore stopped her before she could go on. He smiled reassuringly. "It's all right." The Duke paid them no more attention, turning away to tell Theodore to come to his study. Before leaving, he still noticed the bow Vina was holding. After a moment of silence, he muttered, "The bow's gotten old, so the wood must have weakened, hasn't it?" After the Duke and Theodore left, Ishut and Odie finally arrived, but it was already too late. After hearing what had happened, Odie immediately went after Theodore, while Ishut stayed behind to check on Vina. Back in her room, she was still shaken from having shot her own father. If anyone deserved to be punished for this, it should have been her. Alone in her room, Vina was swept up in a flood of emotions. Relief at finally escaping her father's shadow, fear and guilt for shooting her own father. All those feelings were only now rising to the surface. And along with them came remorse toward Theodore. Her father had come because of her, and all this chaos was her fault too. And now Theodore had been dragged into the mess. Wasn't it because of her that he'd gotten caught up in all that trouble? While she was drowning in self-blame, a quiet hand set some fruit down on her bed. Vina looked up in surprise. "What are you doing?" Seeing this, Sujin scolded her. "I called you earlier and you didn't even answer." She apologized sincerely and asked, "So why did you bring this fruit here? Are you hungry?" With its usual haughty expression, Sujin replied, "Since my useless underling is so incompetent, I had no choice but to take pity on you. I went and found food myself, so you should feel honored to eat it." Seeing Sujin about to leave, she was surprised. "Where are you going, Sujin?" The little slime blushed. "Because my incompetent underling needs some space to think." This concern touched Vina deeply. The way this tiny, gooey creature always looked out for her made her feel comforted somehow. Even so, she squeezed it in mock anger. "Why do you always treat me like your underling?" Sujin huffed. "I take care of you, and all I get in return is your complaining. Humans really are so annoying. What? You little blob of slime." Despite saying that, Vina was deeply grateful in her heart. Thanks to Sujin, she felt much better already. And Theodore had said it was fine that day. For some reason, she felt like everything would turn out okay. Meanwhile, in the study, another conversation was taking place. The Duke handed Theodore a stack of files on noble young ladies. But Theodore showed no interest. "I don't understand why you're showing me these ladies," the Duke said bluntly. "You're 24 now. It's time. Time you started preparing for marriage." Theodore raised an eyebrow. "Have you forgotten why I haven't married or gotten engaged? Who would marry a madman who could snap into a fit at any moment?" The Duke remained composed. "You've had far fewer episodes lately. That just means the treatment I found is working." Theodore pressed him. "And how exactly do you plan to explain that to a noble lady? That her husband will regularly lock himself in a room with a maid for treatment?" The Duke shrugged. "It's perfectly normal for a man to have a mistress or two. No explanation needed." Theodore kept listing objections. "And what if I have an episode during the wedding or the honeymoon?" The Duke answered without hesitation. "If the wedding's already happened, what else can be done about it? If you bring another woman into the marriage bed on your wedding night, the bride will surely faint. If she doesn't want to see it, she can just look away." Theodore was about to say more when the Duke lost his patience and warned him. "You're unusually talkative today." He fell silent for a moment. Then he said seriously, "What if I told you I already have someone in my heart?" The Duke gave a shockingly cold reply. "Then just prepare a bigger bed for the wedding night. After all, if the three of you plan to enjoy yourselves together, you'll need the space." Hearing him say this, Theodore finally realized that from the very start, the man had never intended to ask his opinion on this marriage at all. He had only come to put on a show of respecting him. Afterward, the Duke stood up to leave. He also mentioned, without missing a beat, that he would take care of Vina's father for the sake of Theodore's treatment. As he left, he thought back to how the young lady the Duchess had chosen had hurried off to a convent after Theodore's visit to her estate. He still refused to believe Theodore had feelings for anyone, dismissing it as a blatant lie meant only to avoid marriage. Recalling the look in Theodore's eyes earlier, the Duke remarked, "You're still so naive." Meanwhile, Theodore had sunk into deep thought, sensing that something was off. Several hours had passed since the Duke left, but Theodore still hadn't come out of his room, which worried Odie. Knowing Theodore was always in a foul mood after meeting with the Duke, Odie still risked it and burst through the door. But things weren't nearly as bad as he'd expected. Theodore's mood seemed perfectly normal. Seeing Odie arrive at just the right moment, Theodore asked him about the whereabouts of Vina's cruel father. Things were not as simple as he'd thought. The Duke had made some rather strange remarks, as if he'd already known that man posed a danger to Vina. He'd even said he would handle it personally. Why would a Duke pay such excessive attention to an ordinary commoner? What's more, the sheer terror on her father's face at the sight of the Duke only stirred up 1,000 more questions in Theodore's mind. Was there some dark secret hidden behind all this? He had to uncover the truth, to build an unbreakable wall to protect Vina from any threat in the future. Thinking of her, Theodore's expression gradually softened. Her declaration, "I won't be afraid of someone like you anymore," echoed in his mind, and it made his long-frozen heart feel a strange warmth. The irritation he'd felt after meeting the Duke vanished the moment he thought of her. Vina really must be like a vitamin to him. Thinking of this, he smiled faintly. He'd have to repay her properly for protecting him. After a day full of upheaval, Vina had gone back to her training duties. Her energy and optimism were like a tonic for the whole squad's morale. Just then, Vina noticed the bow Ishit was holding. It was the very bow she had used in the drawing room the day before. He hadn't brought it to demand compensation, it was a gift. Not only that, it was a treasure that had once belonged to Delfio Zacaro, the Duke's uncle, a legend known as the Bow God. A bow crafted for a warrior of extraordinary strength. Even he could barely draw it now. This was also a gift Theodore wanted to give her. Vina froze, unable to believe her eyes, but she quickly came to her senses. She spoke up to refuse. How could she possibly accept a treasure that once belonged to a legend? In her eyes, it felt like an insult, a priceless heirloom she had dared to defile with a single shot. The guilt and overwhelming pressure made her want to return it immediately. But Ishit tried to convince her with a simple argument: everything should be used for its intended purpose. That bow, left sitting in the drawing room as a trophy for show, was truly being wasted. It would be far happier strung and fired by a true archer. Her expression gradually shifted from doubt to thoughtful consideration. Finally, Ishut added a bit of a threat. If you try to return a gift that Theodore personally chose for you, I won't be responsible for what happens next. A haunting, wild scenario played out vividly in Vina's mind. I'll make sure you realize just how foolish this choice of yours was. Well, in a way, you 19-plus readers already know what happens after this, don't you? In the end, she accepted it with trembling hands. Only then did Ishit smile and congratulate her on finally having a bow of her own. Vina also realized she had always been using Ishit's bow. She had never had one of her own. A wave of happiness suddenly welled up inside her. From now on, she would work hard at her training. She couldn't let this bow go to waste. Determined to show her gratitude, Vina went to Theodore's room with morning tea. Her heartfelt gratitude spilled out, and she promised to grant him any request he might have. In that moment, her innocent remark opened the door to an absurd laugh-or-cry situation. When Theodore told her to come closer and face the bed, Vina's mind instantly leapt to a scene fit for adults only. Theodore's faintly outlined abs immediately flashed through her mind. Blushing furiously, Vina blurted out, "I'm not ready to actually become an adult yet." But Theodore only led her to the sofa to sit down. It turned out he only wanted her to model for his painting. Hearing this request, Vina was so embarrassed she wanted to bury her head and didn't dare say another word. In the quiet of the studio, Vina sat as a model, but her mind kept wandering. Their conversation about the paintings around the estate, things that looked impressive but were useless and hard to throw away, which Theodore had just mentioned, struck a nerve in her. She watched Theodore sketching intently, wondering if he saw himself the same way, as something discarded in a side residence without any real worth. That thought made her heart clench. It was simply too painful. She wanted to say something, to comfort him, to tell him he mattered. But before she could speak, Theodore changed the subject. "Vina, what did you mean by what you just said?" The question struck her like a bolt of lightning. Thinking she hadn't heard him clearly, Theodore blushed and repeated the question. "You just said you weren't ready to become an adult. What exactly were you thinking?" The room fell so silent that Vina could almost hear her own heart pounding. Theodore's question struck straight at the heart of her embarrassment like an arrow. How could she possibly voice the shameless thought she'd just had? Her face burned and her heart raced wildly. She stammered out a flustered excuse in a panic. "It's nothing. Really, it's nothing. It's not like I have strange thoughts about you, Lord Theodore." Realizing she'd slipped up, she wanted to punch herself. Why did she keep digging her own grave? Vina tried to cover her tracks, but her flustered reaction only made Theodore more amused. He let out a soft laugh and suddenly gave her a compliment. "Do you know how adorable you are?" Not overly cute, but pretty in just the right way. His sincere tone left Vina reeling. Her head was practically smoking, convinced Theodore was just teasing her. But he was completely misunderstood. He wasn't teasing at all. After that, Theodore started drawing seriously, saying nothing, just watching her closely. The handsome man-loving devil inside Vina stirred once more. She felt like everything Theodore did was gorgeous, and a stream of giddy bubbles kept floating above her head. Then the moment she realized his gaze was fixed on her, capturing every detail of her face, everything felt even more intense. Her whole body began to prickle, her heart pounding so hard she feared he might hear it. He was looking at her, truly looking at her. Seeing her like that, Theodore blushed and spoke up. "Are you having strange thoughts again? Why do you suddenly look so flustered like that?" Vina gritted her teeth and shot back. Not at all. Thinking she was about to be teased again, she decided to turn the tables instead. "I was just thinking Lord Theodore is way too handsome." "I know." His answer left her blushing, her attempt at teasing having clearly backfired. Theodore suddenly spoke up. "I like it like this, for now, because only like this can I look straight at you. To know what your eyes look like, what your nose looks like, even those rosy lips of yours. To take in every detail of your face and carve them into my eyes, into my memory. I like that." These words left Vina stunned. Calling someone adorable or pretty could just be teasing or empty flattery. But committing every detail of someone's face to memory like that felt like, well, almost like a confession. At that moment, Theodore quietly stood up and walked toward her. Vina shut her eyes tight in embarrassment, not daring to look at him. "Vina, look at me. Tell me now, do I look like the Theodore you know?" Through her dizziness, she tried to find something different. "Your eyes look a little strange." Theodore kissed the palm of her hand and asked, "Strange how?" Vina, blushing, tried to answer. "A little reddish, I think." He gave a faint smile and leaned in closer. "Then heal me." With that, they shared a sweet kiss. When they pulled apart, Theodore was about to say something when Vina took the initiative and kissed him again, then added shyly, "I think you still need a bit more healing." Vina's boldness delighted him. "If that's the case, then let's keep going. I don't think I'm quite healed yet." Honestly, I don't even know what color Theodore's eyes are or whether he truly needed healing at all. All I know is that in that moment, Theodore and I were so close, even his warmth. I could feel it. His breath brushing against my lips, and right then, all I truly wanted was Theodore. Theodore looked into her eyes and whispered, "Vina, I want you." The world of the two of them shrank down to just that room, just that shared breath. Dawn broke through the window panes, bringing with it a new day and some startling news. Odie reported to Theodore with a grave expression on the results of the investigation into Vina's father, Rupert Grisha. The result was shocking. The man had not been caught by the guards, nor handled by the men the Duke had hired. He had successfully escaped. That a drunk had managed to slip away from hired men was hard for Odie to believe, but it fit perfectly with the survival instincts and knack for vanishing without a trace of a professional debtor. Still, this was probably the best outcome they could hope for. Theodore immediately ordered Odie to contact the guild to hunt down Rupert Grisha before the Duke could act first. Still a little embarrassed after yesterday's events, Vina went to Theodore's room for afternoon tea as usual. And then she saw the portrait he'd painted the day before. It was so abstract that Vina cried out, "Who is this monster in the painting? Is this supposed to be me? Is this what he painted with such a serious expression?" She felt a little hurt, but quickly consoled herself that maybe one day just wasn't enough time, and that they'd spent more time kissing than actually painting. But Theodore actually felt his painting wasn't half bad. He explained bashfully that this was the first time he'd picked up a brush since he was 5 years old, after being told he had no talent for it. The more Vina thought about it, the more annoyed she got. If he was going to paint something so abstract, shouldn't he have hired a model instead? "I didn't think it was necessary. Honestly, at the time, I just wanted an excuse to look at you." These words instantly doused her anger, leaving her blushing with embarrassment. When Theodore moved to take things further, she quickly stopped him, changing the subject to something else. Come to think of it, if he'd painted something this abstract, no one would recognize her in it anyway. But Theodore disagreed. He felt anyone looking at it could easily tell it was her, because most people wouldn't be able to imagine pink hair like that. Theodore really was a painting genius. Their gentle conversation drifted toward Vina's family. She revealed that in her small village there had been 3 people with pink hair: herself, her older sister, and their late mother. Vina had inherited that hair color from her mother, but her memories of her mother were almost non-existent. While she was still lost in that painful past, Theodore casually remarked, "If you look like your mother, then she must have been a great beauty." That backhanded compliment struck straight into Vina's heart, nearly overwhelming her. Where did he learn to talk so sweetly? Flustered, Vina made an excuse about the tea getting cold and hurried away. Watching her retreating figure, Theodore fell into deep thought. After everything that happened yesterday, he wondered if she would even come to serve him tea again. "If you pushed everything aside in that moment and invited me in just because of the atmosphere, if you now regret it and try to push me away, there's no way I'll ever let you go. Not a chance." Afterward, they enjoyed tea and almond cookies together. The air was filled with warmth and peace. In that simple moment, Vina realized just how happy she felt. But when she mentioned that she couldn't quite remember her mother because she'd been so young at the time, about 19 or 20 years ago, Theodore suddenly froze. The mention of 20 years ago and pink hair seemed to strike some hidden chord within him. What could Theodore possibly be thinking to make an expression like that? Stay tuned for the next part.